Kyle, welcome back to the show, brother. How's it going?
Dude, amazing. Thanks for having me on again, Matthew.
Yeah, man, I think that we share very similar ideologies on trying to kind of keeping mineral balancing as the base, but also keeping our options open because, one of the main reasons I think is just we're a lot more toxic than when Dr. Pollack was practicing. And, I got great results with just mineral balancing with even just endo meds more than most programs, more than any program actually that I tried. So not to knock it, but I think we can take that foundation and keep improving upon it, which would be some of the stuff we're talking about today. But for anybody who didn't listen to that first episode, why don't you just give us like a quick rundown of like your background, your approach, and things like that if they didn't listen to that show?
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm a mineral balancing practitioner. I do also do a lot of detox methods kind of stacked on top of it. I would agree with you. I really do feel like mineral balancing, at least in my practice and my experience, has been the single tool, the single system that generates the most consistent results out of anything I've seen. But there are some things that pair so well and can handle some specific cases so well that it's just hard to not incorporate it and to stay in kind of a rigid box around it. So briefly on my backgrounds, I got chronically ill at about 17, 18. I used to be an athlete, but I didn't realize I was always kind of mildly disassociated and anxious and brain foggy. But I got chronically ill. Essentially, I developed seemingly overnight 2 to 3 dozen symptoms from, skin to joints to absolutely awful dissociative brain fog and absolutely no memory, panic attacks, non-functional digestion, so on and so forth. So I got pretty obsessed with health by not by choice, really. I had to figure out what was going on with me because I had to put my life on pause. So fast forward, there were three distinct breakthroughs that really, really started breaking me through to a higher level of health. The first one was I explored detox. I was mentored under detox really early on, maybe 2018. I learned some basic things about drainage and binding, but there were also a lot of things that were not properly conveyed to me, like how depleting certain binders can be, or the emphasis on doing things at the right time. So I ended up improving and then making myself a lot worse with things like medical chelation and then inappropriate parasite cleansing at the wrong time. I had a breakthrough there, but then I regressed. Then maybe my biggest breakthrough was when I found mineral balancing. It was like this big symbolic moment. I took all the supplements I had in my cabinet, I threw them away, and I just bought at the time, Endomit supplements that Lewis Rollins had me on. He was my first mineral balancing practitioner. And within about 6 months, I had a complete transformation in mind and body. And for the first time, had sufficient energy and stability to like go back to engaging with life, right? I think that's just what I most needed. I had depleted myself with all the detox I was doing. That mineral balancing just instantly brought me back to life. But I still was finding like these ceilings. Right? I was still finding like, why did I feel like my brain just can't quite keep up with like some of the other people out here? Why do I feel like my energy can't quite keep up? Why do I feel like I don't have good exercise tolerance and like, my athletic performance is not as good? So, I kind of went over through some barriers of fear and reincorporated some of the things I had learned with detox and some of the newer things I was learning. And as I did that, I created essentially sequential breakthroughs, right? When I implemented proper drainage and binding alongside mineral balancing, that elevated me. When I implemented immune modulation, especially post 2020, I had other breakthroughs when I finally actually re-explored a parasite cleanse after sufficient time building really good foundations. I had yet another breakthrough, and so on and so forth, right? And so, I've kind of tried to keep my mind open as to just simply chasing what works best and being open to the possibility that, the methods I had done up until then were not the best. And so, here I am, fast forward many years, I've been a practitioner and really, I would say my work is a blend of mineral balancing with, again, various detox tools. And my goal ultimately is try to make the journey as smooth and as safe as possible. I have a lot of, I would even say beef with what I see going on in the healing community right now. There's a lot of gaslighting about what's a Herxheimer reaction, what's a detox reaction. Everything apparently is a good healing reaction, and you just have to push through until you find the other end. And there's many times that I feel like that stuff is just avoidable. It's just doing the wrong thing, right? Or doing the right thing at the wrong time, or doing things too fast. So Anyways, that's the long and short of it, right? I mean, it could go on and on, but yeah.
Yeah, that was great. We have similar journeys there with trying. I kind of, I think you're like me. You like as you got sick, you're like, well, I'm not really that old, so what could be the root here? And as I started to just, I think my buddy Ben Azadi was the first person to kind of put me up on heavy metals because he had gone through some. He studies under Dr. Pompa, so they have their whole method of the way that they treat people with the mercury in the brain and all that, which is fine. Everybody can get to the endpoint however they want. I like mineral balancing personally, but he started doing podcasts about heavy metals, and then so that I was like, I didn't really even know who Dr. Pompa was. This was like 20, I don't know, 18 maybe or something. So then I started like listening to more Dr. Pompa, and I'm like, well, this what makes more sense to me. And it seems like when you do research on heavy metals, which that's only one toxin that everybody's carrying around, although I think they're definitely the most damaging. But I started to realize like, oh, well, they can affect your thyroid. And then like, my doctor's telling me I got HPA axis dysfunction or adrenal fatigue, but he's not addressing any kind of heavy metal load. But when I'm looking into heavy metals, they're directly impacting the HPA axis and the adrenals. And so I'm starting to put together like, okay, and now how do I detox? And then from there, you just get roped into so many different like influencers or podcasts where you're like, okay, this worked for them and it's going to work for me. And you try it and it doesn't work, and then back and forth. And I was just at like a breaking point where I just, heard Clark on a podcast on Mito Life and was like, well, this sounds interesting. Like I had never heard of it. It's funny. I think, Dr. Wilson maybe been kind of shadow banned or something. Cause like when you Google like the old school practitioners, like if you Google something like Dr. Wilson would pull up 10, 12 years ago. But then as we got into more like medical censorship and stuff, I don't think when you put in fatigue or you put in things, even though his article was getting tons of like reads, I don't think they pushed it because I'm like, he never popped up. I mean, I was Googling all day trying to figure out symptoms, and you would have thought like one of his articles would have pulled up somewhere. So I think he was must have been shadow banned at some point. And love or hate Wilson, he was putting out some relatively, a bunch of good information alongside a bunch of the cuckoo stuff. I mean, it's great.
For me, my introduction to mineral balancing was I just Googled brain fog and I found a Dr. Wilson article. Right. I had no idea about the rogue, spirit guide stuff. Right. It was kind of confusing, but the science sounded really sound and it was interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. And he never popped up for me. I just happened to be listening to Mito Life one day, and Clark sounded good. And then I had a buddy who was like, oh, this is the guy that I follow for minerals, and it ended up being my business partner now, Aaron. And I was like, well, okay, between these two, they seem like they know a lot. And I've been had been researching minerals, but just not really dosing them properly. I knew the importance of them. And then so I was like, well, let me get on a program like this. And I do think, there's no good reason, no matter what other practices that we're going to get into today, there's no good reason not to do mineral balancing. I just don't see it. It's like, it is going to help. I don't care what your diagnosis is. Let's see what you need, give you the proper nutrients, put you on, a more specific diet tailored to that. And overall, you may still end up needing some herbs or some other therapies, but it's like, why not just lay the groundwork with the mineral balancing is what seems to be like the most broad spectrum healing thing that people can do across the board. And they can, you're probably like me, you get people they have this diagnosis and that, and their kids got autism, and it just goes across the board. And it seems like everybody, if they are willing to push through some detox reactions or at least work the program, slow down, back off, do the enemas, over time, I just see everybody continuously get better from that. And then maybe we add some things in here and there.
For sure. I mean, it's just because our mineral system is what's most taxed under this really unbelievable toxic soup and unnatural lifestyle. I mean, there are countless things that deplete us and unbalance our minerals. Like even recent wave of COVID and, whatever nonsense happened with that, severely depleted people's intracellular zinc, which is why people were so obsessed with the quercetin zinc, zinc ionophore, drive it into the cells, got good results from it. But that's just one. I mean, there's so many others. And so I do really find that if one wants, some basic symptom relief and such, you can maybe get away with your functional medicine herbs and maybe some naturopathic tools. Small percentage of people might benefit from just like your parasite cleanse right away. But I do believe if you want like real deep transformation and to get to a state of higher resilience and higher adaptive energy, which is really what health is, it's adaptive energy. It's our ability to meet stressors and grow from them and not collapse, right? And that allows us to engage with life. I do think that mineral balancing, right? Or just mineral work in general, but I do think mineral balancing is the most precise right now and maybe the fastest way there. I think that is the way to develop that resilience, that adaptive energy, right? I mean, or at least a big chunk of it. I mean, it's just amazing. Like over and over, I see cases of people who are super, super sensitive to absolutely everything, every little stressor, chemicals, right? Random fillers, and work with them on minerals, work through that initial tough part of like getting that wave of heavy metals out in the first few months, and then you just start to see them build up and like trust their bodies again. It's like so beautiful. And again, what's cool is that if you get that solid foundation of good mineral balance, you can stack protocols on top of it and they will often actually work, right?
Yeah, I think even things like the sauna, like I had the infrared sauna for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I was using it all the time, like 4 or 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, like because I was always like, it would at least make me feel a little bit better. And it wasn't until I started doing the mineral balancing where I felt like, oh, I'm actually like feel like I'm actually releasing things here instead of the sauna just kind of cooking everything. I would feel super depleted afterwards sometimes, but I was just trying to fight through and think I was sweating out all these toxins. But it wasn't until I kind of opened up the organs of elimination more, started moving the minerals around and kind of pushing the metals out that way. Like even things like the sauna or the PMF mat, or things like ozone started to be more effective. Hydrogen felt more effective. It was like that once you start to build the base, all of these biohacker things start to feel 10 times better. They don't really move the needle when you're super toxic because your body's in such a burdened state. You might get a little relief from methylene blue or hydrogen, nothing against, using them still. But it wasn't until I started to really build a foundation where even like but these biohacking like NAD suppositories and things like that started to work a lot more effectively when I wasn't super, super toxic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you need adaptive energy for that. And often a lot of those are hormetic stresses, right? They are like good stresses that force adaptation and change, even exercise, right? I mean, exercise intolerance is so huge, I see in my practice. And if you can remineralize someone properly, you'll often see that they'll actually start benefiting from working out. They'll actually start putting on muscle and gain better stamina instead of feeling just wiped out after every workout, you know?
Yeah, where I just started working out pretty regularly again. I would do it here and there, but still felt like it was kind of taxing me more than it was like giving me life. So I was kind of, and I like once I start working out, I like to go in there like all the time. I'm not a guy who's like, I'm going to do one a week. Like I used to lift like every day back in my 20s and early 30s. And so I kind of just held off on it and would just do like stretching, do the saunas, do the PMFs, and do the other therapies. But now I've been back in there the past few months and I actually feel great when I work out. I don't feel all wiped out, building muscle. But that took me a couple of years. But I was sicker than most of my clients that I even see personally. Most people see a doctor well before they're in the state that I was in. I was like doing drugs and partying and didn't really realize how bad I was. But yeah, let's get into kind of some of the you've touched on it already a little bit, but like kind of this like order of operations, and you brought up parasite cleansing a couple times, and I've kind of been negative towards parasite cleanse. I think we all have, because I think most practitioners, if it's not most, it's a lot, are definitely going about parasite cleanses, whether it be the wrong time. They have no really understanding of how these heavy metals that the parasites are feeding on may recirculate in the system. And if the body's not equipped to handle that, that can cause some issues. So I get people in my practice often who have done these parasite cleanses and they basically are like, I feel worse. Like, I wish I wouldn't have done the parasite cleanse. Like, can you help me out? And so I know that there's definitely errors and wrongdoings within that community, but it seems like you've found a way to kind of do an order of operations. So break that down. Like, how do you know when to incorporate that parasite cleanse? Which parasite cleanse do you think's best? Break that down for us.
For sure. So first off, I want to say that I think parasite cleansing is not do it yourself, right? I think you need someone who's like skilled in that space to properly guide you through it, because it is some really, really deep level work. I also think we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? Pardon the use the cliche, but I mean, there is a lot of potential. I've just seen many, many breakthroughs, both in my own health and in clients' health, when you perform it at the right time. And not everyone needs it. That's also a fact. But what I'm seeing a lot, and I get a lot of cases just like you do, of people doing it at the wrong time, right? Or way too aggressively, or neglecting remineralizing or proper drainage, right? They end up getting worse, right? They end up redistributing the metals, as you say, and they end up with new symptoms. And so that's something that absolutely I'm not a fan of. I will try to avoid as much as possible in my practice. I try to do it only at a very particular time, which is a high degree of stability, right? So briefly, I want to kind of answer this in a like a zoomed out way. So like, why are parasites even there to begin with, right? If you look at biological research, there are countless studies that show essentially the more toxic an environment, the higher the parasite load of those organisms in that environment, right? There's many studies with fish, right? Polluted rivers, they will have way higher parasites than a non-polluted river. Not just that, but the actual parasites themselves will bioaccumulate or biomagnify those heavy metals, but also plastics and pesticides and all sorts of garbage within them so that it doesn't kill the fish. So there's this weird kind of symbiotic relationship going on. Yet these parasites, once they do entrench themselves, they don't want to leave very easily, right? They have all sorts of tricks for evading our immune system, for modifying our neurotransmitters, which will impact how we think, how we feel, how we behave, right? And so one part of it obviously is like, I do believe we really need to change the terrain underneath. But I've also found, again, if you do it at the right time, you don't need aggressive parasite cleanses. You just give the right signal, very relatively gentle tools. People dump stuff and they have incredible breakthroughs. There are other more specific pathogens that, COVID and Lyme disease, that's a whole other bucket. Those are, most likely man-made. But I'm talking about this kind of symbiotic parasite thing going on, right? So when do I actually approach it in my practice? So, I've wrestled with this a lot. Again, for a long time, I was just like terrain theory. I was just mineral balancing. I was just like, that's all we really need. But there were times that even when people were hitting mineral balancing for years, they would just hit a ceiling. They just couldn't progress anymore. And that's, again, why I decided to implement new things, and parasite cleansing was one of those. And I've had many cases, again, that it really can create actually a huge change in a person's psychology even, right? I mean, again, they're intertwined deeply in our minds and our bodies and how they impact our neurotransmitter balance. So many times it's like lifting up almost like a spiritual darkness if you do a good parasite cleanse, but at the right time. So right now, how I'm working with it, foundations are absolutely everything. And within that, mineral balancing is one of the most important backbones to my practice, and I think should be for almost anyone's practice today. Like I'm that much of a believer in it. Within that too, the main thing we need to think about is drainage, right? I mean, Cellcore people talk a lot about it, but in my opinion, they do a poor job of actually executing it, right? It's a wonderful concept that they've kind of brought better into the mainstream. Drainage, how do toxins flow from the cells all the way out into the poop? But I don't think it's enough for them to just do like a step one, just a few supplements for 1 month and then straight into a parasite cleanse. That I've seen that work for maybe 20% of people, but most people have a really bad experience, right? At least what I've seen. So drainage, I think, needs to be expounded upon and actually spent 3 to 6 months on if you want to like properly make big breakthroughs on that. And within that, so again, drainage is referring to how do toxins flow from the cells all the way out into the poop, right? The gut should be the main exit route, has the most surface area, right? So it allows us to really excrete the most. Within that, there are 3 distinct steps I find that I break into like little phases. The gut, first and foremost, right? It's actually our main point of contact with the outside world, not even our skin. By surface area, it's our gut, right? That's what we are constantly bringing in nutrients through, and that is the final exit point for toxicity. And so highest leverage tool is to work on the gut, right? Rejuvenate the gut, heal leaky gut, clean out pesticides, clean out mucus and all sorts of disgusting garbage that's in there. And again, regenerate the gut lining. And if you do a good job with that, you're going to get better bang for your buck with absolutely everything you do, including mineral balancing, I've found, right? So within that, glyphosate we talked about in the last episode, but just briefly to touch on it again, it's just one of the main pesticides that people are talking about, but there's so many others out there. But that is one of the more well-researched ones that is really nuking people's microbiome. So I do find that if you can do a good job, TMG, for example, Cell Restore, good product, actually, as a consequence, does help tackle glyphosate. But good fulvic humics and such can be helpful too. But I do find other things like binders, like toxid binders, and more specifically, binders that are more intestinal focused, like zeolite, right? Zeocharge is one that I know everyone's loving these days. I do like more gut focused zeolites at first with more sensitive clients. But yeah, I mean, I could kind of keep going on and on about it, but I want to just give a brief layout on it. So work on the gut first, then work on the liver, right? And liver, you know, I had a wonderful conversation with a lady named Elizabeth Wells. They call her the liver flush queen. She's really opened my eyes to the power of liver flushing. And that is another tool that I think, in addition to coffee enemas, has been really just changing the game in terms of speeding up people's ability to detox, right? Turns out people's livers are unbelievably congested, right? I mean, really, that's why you keep often seeing stones come out and sludge come out, even just with coffee enemas. But liver flushes, I do believe, again, done at the right time with the right preparation, can lead to some really wonderful breakthroughs in almost any symptom. I mean, the liver handles like over 500 vital functions, everything from testosterone to processing our estrogens to balancing our blood sugar to helping us digest our food. Yeah, I mean, there's so much, even balancing our or handling our viral load, right? So post COVID, that's really, really put a big strain on people's liver. And I've found that you can actually get over a cold quicker, for example, by working on the liver with like a coffee enema or a liver flush, right? So that's a whole other distinct phase. And then the final phase I work on drainage with is lymphatics, right? So there's a big issue with coagulation, thicker blood today, right? Kind of blood clumping together. You know, you're seeing the kind of more grotesque versions of that with, you know, certain medical procedure after 2020. But it's a kind of more universal issue. I know Matt Blackburn talks a lot about it with his CLF protocol, right? So it's the F, fibrosis. That is what often leads to biofilm formation, but also what causes us to have poor blood viscosity. It's something that's pretty neglected, honestly, but if you actually do handle it with something like systemic enzymes, or even just Pectosol can handle it to some degree, you'll find better oxygenation and better nutrient delivery to the entire system, right? And then all of a sudden, again, you are going to have better handling of any stronger tools. So that's the kind of big three on drainage. I could kind of go on and on about that, but those are like the really, really big ones.
Let me jump in real quick before we keep going, because I want to ask a few questions even around this part.
Sure.
So with drainage, I know some people like to sell cell core products for like drainage. Tell me what you're doing as far as like drain, or like some people are doing like the big six, like, you know, obviously manual therapies. There's that. What are the ways that you're opening drainage as far as like supplements or protocols?
Yeah. So, well, let's talk about what mineral balancing does first. So coffee enemas are amazing. I actually am a big fan of upgrading coffee enemas. So I think you maybe are like me in that if I'm going to do some sort of procedure, I'm going to try to get the most bang for my buck with the time I'm putting into it. So I have found you can add all sorts of concoctions into coffee enemas to enhance their effect. One of my favorites right now, for example, is a Tudka coffee enema. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can do advanced Tudka from Cellcore, right? It's my current favorite Tudka, but also Body Bio. It is an amazing, amazing bile acid that not just helps support bile flow and liver function, but it is fantastic for mitochondria, for cognition, for inflammation. There was a study done actually that Tudka would actually increase cognitive function to a similar level that intermittent fasting does, right? So I find that if you add it rectally into a coffee enema and you get systemic absorption, people feel essentially the benefits of coffee enema times 10, right? It's one of my favorite drainage techniques.
I'll be doing that tomorrow.
For sure. It's a fun one. It's a fun one, man. So that's one of the biggest ones I'm doing now. And there's also other things. I mean, you know, you can balance coffee enemas by adding calming herbs and making liver infusions, or liver herb infusions as well. A company I'm really liking right now is Happy Bum Co. They have a really good enema coffee, and you know, enema kit setup, but they also have these different herbal infusions that go really, really well in an enema. So people who feel kind of overstimulated with a coffee enema, you can add Happy Mind tea, I think it's what it's called. So you get some of those more calming herbs, and then you can also add a pinch of salt, and people will often find they're like less jittery and actually more calm from that work, right? There's all sorts of other things you can do, and especially when you get into like parasite work, there is a lot of value in doing stuff rectally, but coffee enemas, goated, fantastic. Then sauna therapy, of course, there's so many podcasts out there about all the benefits of it, but for all intents and purposes, I mean, it liquefies the lymph, and it's going to help take the burden off all the drainage organs, right? Like the kidney and the liver and the gut. I still do believe, though, that there is a potential to mobilize a little too much for sensitive people, especially if you do longer sessions. So big pro tip I give people is to take some binders, some toxin binders, Pectosol, right? Zeocharge, take that before a sauna, and then afterwards do some electrolytes, and you'll find yourself most likely less depleted, right? So other drainage techniques. So we go back to the gut really briefly. People have a lot of garbage stuck in their guts, a lot. I mean, and it makes sense, right? One of the things that our body does under stress is it produces mucus, right? To help us handle toxins and infections and such, right? That's why we get so mucousy when we get a flu or something that the body doesn't like, right? So that happens in the gut a lot. People have what's called mucoid plaque, or like this kind of ropey material that, if they do enemas, they'll often see some come out. I am a really, really big fan of what's called enzyme cleanses. So the Zen cleanses, these are traditional Tibetan medicine recipes where they are fermenting fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, and herbs for several years in these big barrels. They're actually getting blasted with Tibetan sutras during the entire process. I mean, it's a really fascinating piece of technology, really. But so it makes these elixirs that are supercharged with enzymes, and enzymes, they speed up reactions. So not only do they speed up the breakdown of different tissues, they also speed up the regeneration of other tissues. So they have different cleanses that are very short fast, like 1 day fast, just throwing down enzymes that are targeted for different systems of the body. And I'm finding some really wonderful results with those. So the Zen Cleanse 1 is the one I typically have people go with the most. That is the gut focused one that will produce, in maybe 80% of people, pounds of ropey, mucousy, disgusting garbage, and people will often feel lighter. Like with anything else, there's no cure all, right? So some people don't respond to it, but I've had a good percentage of people tell me some really insane things. Like there was one lady who did one Zen cleanse. She didn't do anything else, really. She just started with just one Zen cleanse. And she was like, yeah, it cured my brain fog. Haven't had brain fog since then, right? It's been months. So, and I hear it all the time, especially with restoring digestion. So really good way to help undo, again, decades worth of poor food choices and toxin exposure. I also think colon cleansing is pretty useful. So again, coffee enemas are great, but things like oxy powder, right? That's an ozonated magnesium that can really, really help some people in some cases. And ultimately, like one of the biggest issues up front is constipation, right? If you are not going to the bathroom regularly, everything else is going to slow down. And so it's okay to kind of cheat it with coffee enemas and oxy powder until you resolve the root and improve gut motility, which often happens when you balance the oxidation rate. It often happens when you improve bile flow. I do find that sometimes parasites are heavily involved, and so sometimes it is a parasite cleanse that fully resolves a constipation case. So I mean, I could kind of keep going here, but the other one I do want to again really touch on is like liver flushes. Really, I think right now is maybe one of the most important drainage techniques people can master. I mean, I'm just blown away by the stuff I've been seeing with it. So it's not that hard. There's the amazing, I think, Gallbladder Flush by Andreas Moritz. I forgot the exact name of the book, but it has all the instructions in there. But I often just point people towards a Global Healing Center liver cleanse
I was
program.
just about to say, have you done Global Healings? Because that one I looked into. I haven't done it yet, but I'm like, this looks more reasonable than like taking 3 days off and doing all this crazy. So you do like the Global Healing one?
Yeah, that's a fantastic entry point into it because it's easy peasy. Just throwing back some liver herbs, some turmeric to help dissolve the cholesterol stones and such, and you're just throwing back some oxy powder too. I recommend people take binders throughout it as well. typically improves the results quite a lot. And then, you have the final flush day, which is unpleasant, honestly. I don't like drinking Epsom salt or throwing back olive oil in that amount of quantity, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing. The stuff that comes out of people is insane, sludge and just weird, disgusting stuff. There's people say, oh, well, is it just the olive oil that gets like congested into these stones? In my opinion, no, because those stones come out through coffee enemas as well. And also some people will do the exact same flush several times and sometimes release stones and other times not, right? But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, I mean, it's really wonderful. Right now, once I get people through gut healing and initial stages, I have people on liver flushes once a month, right? I mean, I just really like that powerful. And especially if you're going to embark on a parasite cleanse, like I think liver flushes are even more important. Bile flow is one of the main antiparasitics our body uses in the small intestine. And the more you can increase bile flow, really the better results I think you're going to get. So yeah, I mean, Global Healing Center Liver Flush Program, an amazing, easy introduction into that, I would say.
Are you going to drink your urine next?
No.
I don't think that's smart on mineral balancing. I think maybe if you're not doing a detox program where you're eliminating a bunch of heavy metals, maybe there's some stem cell benefits there. But I've had a couple people ask me, I'm like, hey, you go buy a urine strip, and I promise you're going to have heavy metals coming out in that urine. So you're going to be retoxifying on a program like ours, at least. Maybe if your detox systems are backed up and you're not eliminating a lot, there may be not that many toxins in your urine. So that's why I've steered clear of that one. But I do like all of Dr. Group's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up oxy powder because that's kind of my final boss if I can't get someone over a constipation. I've also heard that the form of the magnesium isn't really even absorbed that well. It's mostly just like the ozone and stuff that gets delivered to the gut. So I'm not too worried about that little bit of extra magnesium, but I still try to do try to do some enemas first, try to do a castor oil pack maybe, make sure your fiber's okay and your water intake. So I do like a couple things first. And if I can't seem to get them over the hump or they don't have time to do the enemas, it's kind of the oxy powder works 10 times out of 10. Like I'm like, make sure you be by the toilet in the morning. Like it's going to happen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's not a matter of if it works or not. It's just how much you take. Because if it didn't work, you just take more and then it works. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great product. I use that well before I even found mineral balancing, and I would just literally go to the bathroom 5 times in the morning. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing like cleaning out your colon to feel less shitty,
Yeah, you got me. I've been wanting to try a liver flush for a while, and Dr. Groups has been one that's been on my mind. So maybe I'll order a kit, and the next time I got a couple free days. I still feel like you need a little free time, but the 3 and 4 day prep ones are just like I'm a little too busy for that. Yeah. But I can find a day.
I mean, with Andreas Moritz too, it's just, I mean, at least the way I have people do it, you're just drinking malic acid and dandelion tea during 6 days of prep and eating clean, and then the actual flush day is really the same, right? You're having
so you are eating even like a more normal diet, but you're just adding in a few things.
Yeah,
so that's not that bad, I guess.
For sure. Dr. Group is a very eccentric character. I mean, he's very fascinating too. But I don't think people, for example, that kit says you need to go like vegetarian during that. I really don't think you need to do that at all, honestly. But
he's a vegetarian, so obviously he's going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, again, interesting guy, but the actual flush day is the same. Andreas Moritz or Dr. Group style with that cleanse, because really it's just you may have a little bit like a moderate fat but higher protein breakfast, and then you're conserving your bile for the rest of the day, right? So you have a 100% carbohydrate lunch, for example, or just fast. A lot of people do well if they just fast the entire day. And then you drink an Epsom salt mixture, which opens up your gallbladder, dilates it open. And then when you actually throw down the olive oil and lay down on your right side, it is going to flush everything that's in there. It's going to allow your liver to really squeeze all that out. So, it's not that hard, really.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to look into it because I'm in the same boat. I'm like, I don't, even if that is just olive oil that's coming out in those stones, I'm like, the people feel great. So there's clearly something's coming out, because I've had tons of people say that they feel great after a liver cleanse or liver flush. So, and those are people who have even done tons of coffee enemas too. So it's definitely working differently as well.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of share a little secret sauce. So, I shared there's like different phases within my programs, right? So in the liver one, there's kind of sequential strength that I build up to. So the very first thing is, basic liver herbs or BioFlow Plus, a fantastic product, by the way. Kudos to you guys. You guys, again, I just want to big shout out for Valence. Honestly, just huge fanboy over here. But
you see Parasites coming out just with BioFlow Plus.
It's
like people switching from just OxBio to BioFlow Plus, and you'll just start seeing Parasites come out.
It's brilliant. Yeah, with mineral balancing in general, you'll see stuff come out usually, right? But so that's the warm up, right? And then coffee enemas are like a level above that, I would say. And then upgraded coffee enemas, right, where you are adding TUDCA rectally, or you could even do what's called TUDCA flushes, right? Where you take a higher dose of TUDCA orally and do a coffee enema, and it creates some similar effects to a liver flush. You can also just add different loose leaf liver herbs to the coffee enema, and so that's a step above, right? And then the pinnacle is liver flushes, right? If you can master a liver flush and then just repeat that on a regular basis, again, it'll do wonders for your health.
Awesome. That's all great information, and I like how you're kind of breaking it all down for us. Now we're into the phase where you've prepped them, you're mineral balancing, working on lymph, trying to do some enemas, some liver flushes, and then they're getting to a certain point. Are you introducing the parasite cleanse like if you see a plateau in the HTMA, or you're starting to get client feedback and they feel like they have a better foundation, or maybe it's like a mix of both? Let us know when you introduce the parasite cleanse.
For sure. So essentially 3 to 6 months minimum of lots of drainage work and mineral balancing. And the prerequisites is people have to be stable, right? So they have to be 75, 80% stable, right? They have to have good enough energy to work, essentially full time if they wanted to, right? They don't have to be healed. They could definitely still have symptoms, but stability, right? They're not like constantly crashing. They're not just like in bed or barely tolerating supplements or anything. They should be able to have a high degree of stability, right? They should be having regular bowel movements as well, I would say, is another probably important one. Even if it is cheating with oxy powder or with coffee enemas, they should still feel like they can evacuate relatively well, right? I usually do a symptom assessment form for people, really in-depth kind of intake, which is like hundreds of questions. And there are certain real characteristic signs of parasites, like recurring anemia, right, is a really big one. Although, of course, mineral balancing can address that. But having symptoms that worsen around the full moon, right? Things like nail biting, things like itchy bum, right? There's many different ones that really, really tell me there's like a bigger parasite issue. And then I try to milk mineral balancing for as long as I can. And then, like you said, when they plateau is usually when I'm like, okay, we're going to dial things back a little bit on dosages of minerals, right? Or even pause it for a little while and then launch on a parasite cleanse. And if done properly, right, that can take about 3 to 5 months. Go low and slow, but again, it can be pretty rad, and people it shouldn't be a battle is what I think. It shouldn't be like this all out war, like you're just trying to nuke all the parasites and get rid of all of them. That's not even realistic. It's more like you are a gardener and you had really shitty soil, for lack of a better word. I mean, just absolutely depleted. And so what grows in bad soil is often weeds, right? They're competitive. They take up space. And so good plants are not going to be able to take root. So you do want to change the quality of the soil. You want to replace that. But then I also believe at the right time, you want to pull the weeds. And so that's kind of like what we're trying to do there. Some tools within that, again, I would say only do this under the guidance of a practitioner. But one of my favorites is Mimosa pudica. I mean, it's one of the best tolerated ones. They call it the happiness herb in traditional Chinese medicine because it's supposed to give a spiritual uplifting. And it is kind of like a binder, but for parasites, as odd as that sounds, right? So it gels up, increases in size, and kind of rips them off the actual gut lining. So people see a lot of stuff with that. That is Para 1 from Cellcore, but Supreme Nutrition sells Mimosa pudica for like half the price, and it's the same quality. So it's a big one. It's a really good one. But then there's other things like freeze-dried garlic. I also love ozonated oils, right? So they call them the rhizoles. Essentially, you get different essential oils and castor oil and olive oil, and you hyperozonate it. It creates hundreds of different compounds that are, antiviral, antifungal, antiparasitic. That stuff is really strong, but you can do it topically, really good for things like toenail fungus or like ringworm. You can do it rectally, right? So you can add it to a coffee enema for systemic effects, and it will also help promote better oxygen loving microbes in the large intestine, right? Because of the effects of ozone. But you can take it orally as well. Really, that's my main anti-parasitic. People can do the self-core parasite cleanses, but they're good. They're kind of semi DIY, but I find there's better tools out there. But again, I mean, all this stuff needs to be done at the right time, right? Steps cannot be skipped. But once you kind of complete that process 3 to 5 months down the line, you have to really also make sure you are draining like crazy. Like oxy powder is huge. I really also strongly recommend people are doing liver flushes throughout the entire process. So like even, twice a month if they can manage it, but at least once a month, your regular coffee enemas, your regular sauna, trying to dial things back on other areas. So like mineral balancing is obviously super important, but I often find it's a little too much to do high dose mineral balancing and parasite cleansing. You can just usually get away with some oxidation rate modifiers, maybe some NAK up, maybe some CalMag fusion, and then just keep the ball rolling at a lower dose with that. But once you're done with that, then I just finish everything off and I crank back up mineral balancing, and often you'll find better tolerance too. Main reason why is because parasites are an endogenous source of ongoing toxicity. They are always releasing biotoxins, right? Molds too, same thing. And what that ends up doing is that ends up clogging our drainage pathway. So obviously we want to work on drainage up front, but the main offender, this is, for example, some people you may have run into that feel like they are dependent on binders. They like the second they stop taking it, they start to feel toxic again. It's because of the endogenously produced toxins within them, right? And if you can reduce the parasite load to a reasonable degree, then allow the immune system to handle the rest, you'll often find that everything is a lot more easily tolerated, and that includes mineral balancing. So then crank it up again, go higher dose, and people often find it works a little better. So
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was kind of wondering like what your dosage of like minerals would be when you're trying to like work on a cleanse, because it seems like it would be probably overwhelming to go max dose like I do, but then also start killing off a bunch of parasites. And so are you like, I heard you bring up castor oil, which is a thing that some people drink, which I've never tried, but it's supposed to kill off tons of different bugs and parasites and things. I haven't done a deep dive into it. I've done castor oil packs. I like them. They're just kind of messy, and I haven't done one in a while, but overall, what was it, like the Queen of Thrones makes a good one that's kind of less messy and has a good bandage. So I like that. But as far as drinking it, I haven't even ever done that. All I know is when my wife was pregnant and they were trying to induce labor naturally, they had her drinking these like castor oil smoothies, and she literally like barfed up the first one, which they give you two. They're like, you probably will puke up the first one. And so she literally did. And she's literally 9 months pregnant. Water broke, but we were trying to speed up labor so that we didn't have to get transferred to the hospital. And we ended up having to get transferred anyway. She didn't dilate fast enough, so we still ended up having to have it was a vaginal birth, but it was at the hospital instead of the birthing center in case there was going to be a infection or anything. They don't have antibiotics there, but that's the only time I've really even seen anyone drink castor oil. So are you having people do that as part of the program?
Yeah, it is a kind of entry level parasite cleanse, really. That is something that you can dip your toes in relatively easily, and it's just taking 1 to 2 tablespoons of castor oil orally with some lemon juice and lots of water, and you will poop a lot for several hours, quite a lot. But it's good for microscopic parasites, not as good for the bigger ones. But yeah, it is kind of an entry level one. Not everyone's willing to go through that level of unpleasant experience in cleansing, so it's not always recommended. But it is one of the cheapest introductions into that. It's done in India all the time and in other countries as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's just been around for thousands of years. So it's kind of one of those things where you're like, definitely don't discredit it. And I would always feel really calm and sleep better when I did the castor oil packs. It just starts to be like, how many things can you stack in a day when you get busy? But I've actually been reading about people doing castor oil packs during the coffee enema, which I'm like, okay, I used to like sleep with it, or you want to have it on for a couple hours, but I'm like, I could maybe compound the coffee enema. Speaking of stacking and hacking coffee enemas where you're already doing one therapy, you could maybe just I'm going to start trying that out, I think, because I think that they would actually work synergistically, and then you would just you're already laying on the ground doing the enema anyways, throw on some castor oil and kind of like compound the effects with that. So I definitely like castor oil.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, and you could add one of those red heat lamps as well, right? Just shine it on the abdomen too. Yeah.
Yep, that's what I try to tell people, to even get the cheap red light bulbs if they can't afford a sauna. It's definitely better than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
Yeah, because sauna's kind of a luxury. I don't think, the Therasage is reasonable. I think tariffs kind of bumped it up a few $100, but to be expected, I guess. But because Robbie, I think, knowing Robbie personally, I think he keeps his margins relatively fair. But then when you throw a tariff in there, now he's like, okay, I got a business to run here. But they're still like $1,500, and I've literally had mine for like 7 years. It works perfectly. So like, I think when I bought it, it was like 1,100 or 1,200, and it might not even just be all tariffs. Last time it could be inflation, could be everything. Stuff costs more nowadays. So I know that is, but still $1,500 for a sauna that you might use for a decade or two. As long as there's no significant issues with it. I mean, that's really cheaper than going to any kind of like biohacking clinic, and the improvement you get from the sauna is there's second to none. It's like, it's really irreplaceable. As far as all this other stuff that we're trying to do, you can get most of it from the sauna, honestly. So having that in your back pocket is just, there's really no replacing that. You get the light therapy. Mine even has red light panels in the front that are different than the infrared. It's got grounding and dirty electricity filters. I mean, that's a good sauna.
That's good.
Yeah.
What's the name of that sauna again?
In there. Therasage. Yeah,
Therasage?
I have an ad for it in my podcast. I know the owner. I have his PEMF mat. I mean, it gets hot because it's just like it's a personal portable sauna, right? So it folds up. Like, I took that sauna camping one time. That's how easy it is to travel with. My buddy pulled up in his RV. We folded the sauna up, took it, and obviously we weren't like deep in the woods. We were at a place that had like Wi-Fi and whatever, but we were out in nature for a couple days. And we plugged the sauna in. We were out there, and he had like a portable cold plunge too. So we were with a chiller. So we were kind of doing back and forth hot cold therapy out while we were camping. Even it was pretty dope. But that's how easy it is to travel with. It folds up and has a bag that it goes in. It's super light, and it has full spectrum red light therapy. So it's got near, far, and mid, which Robbie likes. He tries to mimic the sun as much as possible. Which I think is kind of good to get a little bit of each. The red light panels in the front, they might not be as strong as like Juve or one of these high level brands, but you're already sitting in the sauna, so you might as well get the therapy from it. And then it's got tourmaline for grounding, dirty electricity filter, low EMF. I mean, it's a solid product for even when it's up at $1,500. It's definitely worth it.
That is nothing for what you're getting, because there's a big issue with like toxicity and off gassing in saunas today. So it's good to have like something that's very conscious of it. Also, a lot of saunas are really high EMF. Some people, just really, really sensitive people, can't tolerate it, so that's good.
Yeah, I've always had this dream of like this big wooden sauna in my house, so you could have like the wife in there or the kids as they grow up, and you start to look into some of those and you're like, man, the wood might not be the best with all that sweat. You'd have to really do some upkeep to make sure that it doesn't grow mold or have some kind of mold resistant kind of material or something. So that might not even be the most optimal. It's fun to have a group in there, but I kind of like my portable one because I know it's clean and I can just spray it with some non-toxic stuff on the bottom. So saunas really are critical, but all these other things Kyle's mentioning, I think they're just good to try to play with and improve upon. And we do see plateaus in HTMA, and if you power through it long enough, maybe you'll come through on the other end. But, if there are ways we can kind of say, all right, let's lower the minerals for a minute, try to address some of this big toxicity while strategically using the binders, because these byproducts are real. That's why I like Zeocharge so much, because I think even mineral balancing, as you kill off a parasite, there's, you're going to have histamines, you're going to have ammonia, things like that Jeff talks about that the Zeocharge is good for. That's why when people take it, sometimes in the beginning, they are dumping something a little extra because it's a strong binder. So yeah, you're going to mop some stuff up. But as the longer I see people use it, and I've seen this with myself, it starts to get really easy, and you almost look forward to it because now the mineral balancing symptoms are so much dramatically less because you took the Zeo charge. And so, I mean, Pectosol, whatever you want to take, but something in there. But I like the Zeo charge, especially for like the ammonia, and he claims it'll grab the histamine. Seems to be definitely like if I'm feeling reactive and I take that Zeo charge, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm back to baseline. So I really do like a lot of that stuff, and we got to kind of expand on mineral balancing, I think, in general. And so you're just use that low level kind of gradual over time parasite cleanse, correct? You don't use like, I think Zen Cleanse themselves has one, obviously Cellcore. You don't use any specific ones?
Yeah, I mean, Zen Cleanse is they're sort of antiparasitic, but not really. Again, they're just enzyme cleanses. They have a liver one, but I think you could just do liver flushes. And honestly, you
Okay.
can do 4 liver flushes, like the kits, for the price of one Zen Cleanse, because of the tariffs and stuff too, has increased the prices of them. And then they have a lymphatic one that's really good. It's called the Flow. That's again dealing with some of that hypercoagulation issue. But yeah, I mean, I cell core kits for some people work, and I don't recommend it that often. Really, if I do, I might do just like pair 1 and 2, and then just maybe some freeze dried garlic and call it a day. It just does not have to be complicated. Again, this is different than like maybe a Lyme case that some people do require like liposomal herbs, things like liposomal biocidin and biopure cocktail and other things like that. But it's just for basic parasite cleansing. You can do cell core, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be even that aggressive. It's an afterthought, really. And that's again because you're already going to see so much stuff coming out of you, if you're doing a good job of terrain change and ultimately empowering your immune system. That's what this is all about. This isn't about an infinite war against good and evil within your gut, right? About the pathogens versus the good microbes. It's really about empowering your immune system to regulate things and then signaling it, hey, it's time to kick these bad boys out. Like a lot of these herbs, actually, all they really do is signal the immune system to kick into action, right? And so if your immune system's dysfunctional and you're depleted and you're toxic, right, you're going to have issues with parasite cleansing regardless, right? So that should be the focus always. How do we empower ourselves? And then when you think of it in that framework, the goal stops being get rid of all the parasites. And the goal really is more about creating harmony within us. And that sometimes mean, hey, reduce the load of them. And then what's left, your immune system can generally handle, right? And you stop being symptomatic for that.
Yeah, it's a super interesting approach that I had went back and forth with, like maybe I should do some long-term clients and start them on, a parasite cleanse or these liver flushes beforehand. But it almost sounds like you think that they're so depleted, they kind of need to build up, because you could, think about adding in some kind of parasite cleanse to someone in like 4 lows with like a 0.5 NAK ratio who's already got crazy liver congestion, kidney congestion. So really getting the HT and starting to move that needle first, slowly, low dose probably, especially if you're using valence. I find that most of my new clients could do like 1 dose a day for a minute, and then they find. I just had a client I posted the other day who was literally breaking open tablets and sprinkling like powder into her water because it
All
was
the
just so
time.
strong.
Yeah.
And it worked for her. So now she's like a month or two in, and she's like, I can take 2 caps of this and 2 caps of that. But she was literally sprinkling stuff in her water at first. And so that's how like effective mineral balancing will start to switch on multiple different systems, because we hit the kidneys, we hit the liver, we hit multiple different systems that the minerals work on. We start speeding you up or slowing you down with different B vitamins and compounds there. So you're definitely working on like tons of systems all at once. And the microdose, or just 1 dose a day, most people don't have to microdose. Most people can do like just 1 dose a day. Then like a month or two in, they can go up to 2 doses. And I find that that's pretty effective. And that's probably the biggest hurdle with valence. We got to get some more like a course, or we got to do something. We've just been kind of trying to run the business so far. 3 guys who don't really know how to run. We never own a supplement company. You just run through hurdles like you get hit with a hiccup and figuring out taxes and how to pay everybody. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like when you've never ran a business like that, the learning curve's insane. I guess you can probably carry that forward in other businesses. It'll probably be very beneficial, but it's been a hurdle for 3 guys who never ran a company like that. But
Yeah.
where's it go? I was going with that. I lost my train of thought starting to talk about the business a little bit. But either way, the getting people turning those systems on in one dose a day. But I was saying we need more like a course or something about like dosing. I would say the biggest hurdle is like a practitioner starting to use valence would not really understand how powerful they are, maybe overdose, the client hates it, and then they just go back to Endomed or some other brand. I think that's the hurdle we need to get over, because I'm literally starting my new clients on like one dose a day. Like just take these in the morning, see how that feels. I give you the 3 doses here, but just take the morning dose. Let's report back in a week or two. Okay, you feel good, because you know how it is. Like somebody can have a bunch of symptoms and they kind of can just do mineral balancing easier than a guy who comes to you and he's like, I'm kind of healthy, but I'm just trying to optimize, and they just get absolutely smoked. Yeah. And I don't know if there's a genetic component or if it is just they have more like kind of congestion as far as like their drainage pathways, but definitely some people can detox a little bit easier than others, it seems. And so it's best to kind of just go low and slow with it in the beginning. And I think the mineral balancing people, especially if they've been in this space for a long time, they're trying to like match milligram per milligram, or thinking that they need this dosage of mineral. And it's like, you don't in the beginning. Your client's going to hate it and feel awful and not want to keep using the products.
Yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of like hypersensitive people. And so the opening the capsule and pinching it, right? Adding it to water, I call it the pinch method. So you just do 1 pinch per day, then 2, then 3. I have to do that all the time. But if you are patient with it, you will get momentum in your favor, right? You'll start to get those systems back online. It'll start to kick the toxins out in a more tolerable way. Really, there's just like a general principle in healing, which is a little annoying, but whatever tool has the highest capacity to make change and transformation also has the highest potential to mess you up, right? So with mineral balancing, that's the case. If you just go in, I can handle it, right? You just go like 3 times a day mineral balancing, you may tolerate it, but you also may have a absolutely insane dump, right? And so it's just about making change really in a pace that is tolerable, right? Too much change is going to lead really to chaos and instability. And ultimately then if you are just like getting into that space of chaos and instability, that happens a lot in other healing programs, right? Where people are going through constant Herxheimer reactions, right? Life ends up being about healing. And ultimately, I think healing should be about helping you live a more full life, right? And so in order to do that, you have to be really, it's an art form, right? It's that learning that dance, that edge. How much can you push for a person, right? For a little discomfort here and there, but it gives the fastest progress that's reasonable for their lifestyle, right? And again, ultimately, I think the hardest part is at the beginning, right? I mean, that is where you have a certain static inertia, right? That, people have, their body's been this way for a long time. And breaking that takes a little more energy than keeping the ball rolling. And eventually people do get most often into a kind of cycle of accelerated returns where detox is easier, drainage is easier, they're releasing more and more stuff, their hair tests look even better each time, they can handle higher and higher dosages. You just have to get patient to get there, right? And you really just have to, I think, focus on that gradual, steady progress. One example I want to talk about that I think is really interesting, I don't think anyone's talking about it in the mineral balancing space right now. There is a condition that's called Cryptopyrroluria, right? So they call it HPU, KPU. Essentially, it is a induced deficiency of zinc, B6, manganese, and several other things like chromium, lithium, arachidonic acid, like so many other things. But mainly it's zinc and B6, right? This is something that happens all the time in Lyme cases, right? Like most Lyme cases are going to have KPU, HPU from my understanding. And what's interesting is that mineral balancing essentially addresses it without people really realizing, right? Because it's going to replace that zinc, that B6, that manganese, that chromium, and often the copper is needed too, right? But what happens is there's essentially the formation of heme gets broken, right? And that ends up causing people to, again, excrete a lot of these minerals and vitamins. It can be induced. It can be induced by trauma, right? It can be induced by alcoholism. It can be induced by, Lyme disease. It can be induced by so many different things. But when you get the chronic deficiency state, your immune system collapses, your detox pathways collapse. And so when you actually start reintroducing that zinc and B6 and the other nutrients, everything comes back online. And those cases in particular, when they have KPU, HPU, they have the hardest time at the very beginning because it's like they haven't had these nutrients for ages. You give it to them, all of a sudden their body's trying to complete years worth of backlog in a short period of time, right?
That
So
was probably me with my Lyme. I got smoked in the beginning, and I was just using Endomet. Only thing I didn't use by them was like I used a better form of zinc because that was a pretty easy replacement and not mess with the ratio. So I was just using like a zinc orotate or zinc picolinate, something that was a little bit better than the zinc chelate. But maybe I was having that issue because I was just getting smoked in the beginning. It was like, I don't know, anybody gets through this, and then yeah, I probably should have lowered the dose, but I'm just a little bit more of a savage. I don't do that with clients now that I've kind of been through it. I'm like, yeah, that probably wasn't smart, but I just kept taking every dose because I had been sick for so long. But what you're talking about now could have been partial with me too, because I had the Lyme diagnosis and the Epstein-Barr and the Babesia, all the co-infections that come with it. So that could have been part of my issue too.
potentially so. Some of the most characteristic signs of that are going to be the white spots in the fingernails,
Oh, I had those too.
poor dream recall, and overall like low grade depression. There's several other ones that just come and go, but those are kind of the main ones. Very interesting rabbit hole. Scott Ferguson, I think I forgot how to pronounce his last name. He wrote a really wonderful in-depth article on KPU HPU that's absolutely fascinating. I highly recommend people check it out, especially if they're in the mineral balancing community. It's pretty eye-opening because it explains so much about certain cases. But yeah.
It's just bizarre how the nutrients, whether it be minerals or vitamins, are just impact everything, and that's why I'm like, you need to go back to the mineral balancing as the base, and then add in some specifics, which I want to get into now as some more of these specifics because I know that you've worked with some specific. We'll start, I guess, with the COVID cases. So, what have you been seeing since 2020? It does seem, vaccinated or not, people have had a harder time with their health since either attracting the actual virus naturally or, obviously the vaccine comes with a whole host of other issues that we're finding. I mean, I think a lot of us knew, but they're kind of, putting more information out now that we have RFK in the building and at least releasing some data that, the public deserves to know because they were kind of forced to take this thing. But what of some of the more health struggles you've seen, and how are you kind of attacking like long COVID type issues?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that everyone seems to be impacted right now because it just spread like wildfire and hit people multiple times. It seems like people who got that medical procedure are dealing often with worse issues. Thankfully, some people who got that medical procedure actually got saline solutions. There were several batches that were just not actually even shots, but yeah, it's an unfortunate issue because even just COVID itself seems to act kind of like a retrovirus. It does embed itself into people and it creates immune dysfunction. So I'm finding maybe 3/4 of my new cases, they describe that after 2020, at some point, their health got worse, right? Most commonly, it's nervous system related. So worse brain fog, worse cognition, worse mood issues, especially things like POTS, right? Autonomic nervous system dysfunction. There's an absolute epidemic of POTS going on right now, which is essentially that feeling faint syndrome where, you, for some reason, essentially your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure drops, and then you feel like you're going to pass out, but you don't actually, right? So that has become really an epidemic post-COVID because of how dysregulating it is to our autonomic nervous system. But the main thing is that people could have had their issues kind of quieted, right? They could have had their parasites under control. They could have had their Lyme under control. And then COVID came around and things just like flare up again, right? Again, because of its impact on the immune system. So I do find that doing something in almost all my cases generally benefits people. So, with that, high dose melatonin we talked about in the last episode turns out to be one of the most potent anti-COVID tools. It's also multi-purpose for a million other things. But even simple things like dandelion, high quality dandelion tincture and tea not only helps drain the liver, but it's been shown to actually help denature that spike protein and also help block its attachment to what's called the ACE2 receptor, which is how it exerts a lot of its biological effects on people. There's so many other tools. Cell Restore, right? You guys came out with a really good product that turns out is actually pretty damn good for long COVID and helping fix the immune system. In particular, one of the big things there is that NACET, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Really, really good stuff. NAC in general, right? There's another product called Augmented NAC from zerospike.org. That is a nonprofit research institute that is essentially they were kind of funneling all their energy into trying to develop something specifically for spike protein, which is the big issue with COVID and people who got the medical procedure. So augmented NAC is essentially a kind of like almost like a crystallized form of NAC that enhances its effects in denaturing spike protein. They have their own like experiments that show that, but can be really wonderful for people. Bonus of it is, of course, you get benefits in your glutathione system and mercury detox and healing the lungs and such. But for COVID specifically, that's a really, really good one that people that I find, again, I just look at their case history. Did they get significantly worse after 2020? If they did, I kind of put a little more energy into this bucket, right? Another really interesting tool that's blown my mind is nicotine, right? I was
going to bring that up.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I found it out. But there's actually research on nicotine goes way back for regulating all sorts of other conditions and as an anti-inflammatory and immune modulator and helping different receptors in the brain. But especially post-COVID, what it seems to do is it seems to fix some corrupted receptors. And I've seen it actually many times be really wonderful for people who lost their sense of taste and smell, and also really wonderful for that long COVID brain. It's kind of.
Have you seen these all natural nicotine patches that Dr. Group recommends? Have you seen these?
Oh, I haven't seen them yet. What are they called?
Yeah, I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the name, but Tolevita. TLEVITA.
Okay.
So they're like all like herbal, and they actually use organic tobacco extract for the nicotine. And so like the patches are still like the best delivery method. Probably I love pouches or lozenges personally, but the patches are probably best, and they kind of gradually give you that slow dose over the entire day.
Easier to control.
You can dose it real specific that way. But they've just made even a cleaner pouch for that now. And there are benefits to tobacco that people don't really put together with nicotine, like using the full plant. Tobacco itself has kind of like masculine and feminine energy. It's more masculine. It has the upper, but it also, the other, I don't know if it's flavonoids or whatever else is in there, the other parts of the plant have more calming effects that go with it too. So it's like when you use a full tobacco, if you ever smoked even like an organic cigarette, or I've smoked like organic tobacco out of a pipe. I'm not a big cigarette guy. I've never smoked one, but I've done, regular nicotine pouches that I like, but also like when you do the whole plant, it's definitely a different experience.
Sure.
And so I think that's where they're trying to get a little bit with those patches, clever. But they're also cleaner. So check those out.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good tip. Thanks for sharing. Matt Blackburn's really been, he's kind of helped me understand some of the intricacies of tobacco. I mean, I know that boy smokes like a cigar a day. But yeah, it's interesting because, like cigarettes have essentially like corrupted tobacco, right? They took a plant that was really sacred in indigenous cultures. I mean, all sorts of beliefs around it. I mean, they even, I'm pretty sure some cultures used it to connect to the spiritual world more easily.
Yeah, the hape I use in my combo ceremonies is like, dude, they're like singing songs and prayers over it while they're harvesting it under full moons and during ayahuasca ceremonies and by the mother of the tribe and stuff like that. Like they go deep with their tobacco products, but we've bastardized it for sure with just modern cigarettes.
For sure. The other issue is, of course, the growing procedures today are not very good. And there's certain plants that like to hyper concentrate heavy metals due to, again, the imbalances of minerals in the soil. Which is interesting, right? It starts with the soil, mineral balance ripple all the way out into us. But you have, again, that issue with cadmium, which is, it's a hard mineral to get rid of. And so I don't recommend introducing too much more into you, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. The cadmium is one of the most toxic. Builds up in the kidneys, starts to shut down different detox procedures and enzymes and things. So it's like once you have a certain amount of that cadmium, it starts to shut things down at a pace where like now you're just going to build up like every exposure that you come in contact with too. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, that's like, it's interesting because I mean, toxins in general, they tend to interact with each other. They tend to, I don't know if we mentioned this experiment last time, but there's that experiment with like mercury and aluminum where you take the LD1. So LD1 means, kill 1 out of 100 mice, right? So you take the LD1 of mercury, combine it with the LD1 of aluminum. So 1 out of 100 mice with mercury, 1 out of 100 mice with aluminum. So LD1 plus LD1 actually equals LD100 in this case, right? There's a synergistic toxicity there that happens with a lot of different toxins. I mean, Stephanie Seneff has shown the novel compounds that are exponentially more toxic when aluminum interacts with fluoride, or when fluoride interacts with glyphosate, or when aluminum interacts with glyphosate, right? And so what I think is just so absolutely crazy is that our bodies are actually able to not only like store this in different areas, which sometimes the parasites are even involved in that, but store this in different areas in a way that doesn't allow them to mix and interact with each other, that makes things exponentially worse. I think that stuff really, really blows my mind. But as a result, what happens is if a person has one particular toxicity that's out of control, like let's say amalgam fillings, everything else gets kind of screwed, right? Everything else kind of goes down. You'll see those trends on hair tests, right? If you see one heavy metal really off the charts with an acute exposure, you'll often see like very poor eliminators with the other ones, right? So
yeah. Definitely. And even, fish is a big one. I've been asking every client. It used to be more so I felt like every client with high mercury was eating fish, but now sometimes I just see it off the charts and they're not eating fish. It's just crazy the exposures that we're getting, but I still say relatively high amount of them are eating fish a little regularly, and you got to tell them to back off that because they'll have all these poor eliminators, but all of a sudden their mercury's high. I'm like, you don't have enough energy to be excreting this much mercury. It must be coming in environmentally. But yeah, back to COVID. So nicotine, and definitely I always say 2020 was a good time to be addicted to nicotine. I've always used nicotine. I used to chew like grizzly wintergreen back one of my party days, and then I gave it up for a few years, but then like Ben Greenfield and Paul Check and these guys were talking about the benefits, and I definitely abuse it, but it's just kind of like one of my little things that I don't care as much about. I keep getting healthier and eliminating parasites, so I can't complain. It helps you tackle a day for sure. But nicotine, binds that same, ACE2 receptor. And I think that's what probably helped me get over COVID. And I knew that because I was researching it like early on, that people were kind of bringing that point up. So when I actually had COVID, I had some organic tobacco. So I was like nicotine lozenge. I was smoking the pipe. I was doing melatonin. I was doing methylene blue. Oh, yeah. So all sorts of things. What about methylene blue? How do you feel about that for COVID?
It's very interesting. I don't know actually about its implications for COVID. I would be surprised. I do know that it actually has a unique property for helping kill Bartonella, which Bartonella is one of the hardest Lyme co-infections to treat. I mean, like really frustratingly hard. But methylene blue does a really good job. But yeah, I would love to hear. I'm not actually familiar with COVID.
I don't know the exact breakdown of it, but I know that was one of the big, it's got some antiviral properties there where people were kind of doing melatonin in the day, or melatonin at night, methylene blue in the day, high dose vitamin C, zinc, the other basics. But that was kind of like another stack that people were doing with methylene blue, and maybe just upregulating some mitochondrial function. But I think there's actually some antiviral property there that was working for some people, and at least making them feel better as well, because it kind of gives you that like little boost in your mood and your mental. So probably was just helping people not feel like they were dead as well. And then you hit it with the melatonin at night with a couple other supplements, and you were pretty good. I was doing ozone. I was doing everything that I had at my disposal, but mine wasn't too bad. But maybe it's because of nicotine as well.
I mean, there was an interesting study. Pardon me if I butcher the details, because it was a long time since I read it, but it was if I'm not mistaken, it was out of China. They essentially just saw like COVID outcomes, right? Like who had the worst cases of COVID and got hospitalized, and who generally did better. The weird paradox was that it was the cigarette smokers that actually did better, right? And you would expect, they do worse because of like the pulmonary issues. But in this particular one case, the benefits of tobacco were actually outweighing
there was. I think they knew that too, because obviously these fuckers made it in a lab anyway, so they knew what it was going to bind to, and they knew everything before it got released. And there was that campaign, you remember, about like smoking. When I don't know if you see, like they were starting to post like you're going to have these worse outcomes if you smoke. And obviously maybe they might've got a couple people to quit smoking, but like my mom's super unhealthy and has smoked for 40 years. She wasn't going to put down cigarettes just cause you release some virus from a lab. She was just going to take it on the chin. So she's still smoking. And my mom claims she like never really got COVID. I mean, I don't think she was going to get tested either. And she got sick a couple times, but so maybe she did catch a mild case of it. But I honestly think she's not that healthy, does not eat great, kind of drinks soda, just, typical mom that you're not going to change, love her anyways. And she smoked cigarettes though, and she never got hit with anything crazy as far as COVID goes. And I think that a lot of people who are just random nicotine users definitely just lucked out during that time period.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Another interesting one, just to kind of to wrap up the whole COVID thing, lithium, right? Lithium orotate turns out.
Oh, interesting.
Has some really good antiviral properties that I didn't know about. And there's plenty of studies on it for COVID too. So that's usually within my stack, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I knew it was definitely antiviral. Displaces lead. Most people are using it for just like a mood boost, but lithium's pretty, does all sorts of different things in the system. I like lithium a lot. Oh, yeah. But I didn't really know it was specific to COVID.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it displaces mercury as well from the hippocampus. So you get some memory boosts after several months of using it too, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, we got Lethos coming back. We were going to discontinue it. It didn't sell. I think we just need some more information around it, or maybe mineral balancing practitioners are like, shit, everyone's already kind of on 7-8 supplements a binder. Maybe it's just the easy one to leave out. Mm-hmm. But I do think that we bumped the doses up a little bit too, because we were super low on it. But I think people could actually tolerate it a little bit higher. We didn't bump it up. It's not a high dose or anything, but I think we bumped it up a little bit. But yeah, I always felt great on Lethos. I would take like 4 or 5, 6 of those in a day sometimes. And I love the Lethos with that little extra chromium and vanadium. And chromium's very low on every hair test too. So I think almost anybody could do a little bit better with, even 50 to 200 micrograms of that as well. But then the vanadium's got some cool properties, and there's some cool studies around people who had vanadium in their drinking water, very similarly to like the low dose lithium studies you'll see for people who had lithium in their drinking water. Yeah, so there's like vanadium rich water in certain regions, and they have like 80% proved health outcomes and like all these things. So it's like this little critical mineral that does a lot of stuff. And that's why we added it to Lethos to kind of mimic like low dose, like you would get maybe in like a drinking water somewhere. Because it's hard to really know like dosage for sure on vanadium. You can read it. It's not one that's really commonly supplemented with and like super well researched. So I was like, probably better to play it safe and just kind of low dose it. But definitely helps with like blood sugar regulation, insulin, and there's a lot of different things that vanadium's really good for too. Yeah,
and that's big today. I mean, I'm seeing so many issues with blood sugar regulation. Again, actually post-COVID, I've seen post-COVID, it really screwed up people's metabolism, which is why everyone's obsessed with Ozempic, even though there's like class action lawsuits on it. But anyways.
Yeah. I've actually, not to go too far off topic, I've been playing around with retatrutide for the last few weeks. I just wanted to see like what it would do. It's that triple agonist, GLP, GIP with the glucagon, and it does seem like if you could like you almost need more carbs. Like I'm in fast oxidation, so I keep them. I don't do keto, but I keep them on the lower end. But I've noticed that I've had to bump them up, especially like with working out and using that Reta. I'm on a super micro dose just a couple times a week. Some biohackers are playing with it. I was like, I'll see what it does. But overall, it's been actually, I feel pretty good. But I think the Ozempics and some of the earlier ones and the dosage is really small. Like what I'm doing with Reta is like a micro dose, nothing crazy that's going to make you go blind or give you gut dysfunction or anything crazy they're talking about.
Yeah, I've actually heard that you can use a microdose of that as a mast cell stabilizer, right? I think I heard
that seems interesting. It turns some of the white fat into brown fat as well. Helps with that blood sugar regulation. You can actually decrease fat around the organs they're showing, which I think would actually do nothing besides benefit like a detox program. Obviously you have fatty liver, the liver is going to be overtaxed. So there may be that's why I'm playing with it, some kind of situations where, or even obese people, but then also I look at it from the detox lens where it's like, if you're not probably binding, like you don't want to lose weight too rapidly on it. So it's like a low and slow, because if you're just going to drop 20 pounds in a month, like, and you're not taking a binder and you're not, you don't have your drainage working right, the reason you're probably feeling more fatigue is probably those toxins being released from the lipolysis from it, because it does increase lipolysis because it's breaking down, helping to break down fat. There's even people who are doing like bulks now, like I follow some gym bros. They're losing weight doing a bulk on Retta. So like it's clearly just like torching fat, even in a calorie surplus. But these guys are working out pretty hard too. But like that's kind of bizarre. Like you're usually expecting when you do a bulk phase to put a little bit more around the midsection because you're bumping the calories up. But they're actually like literally staying super lean in a calorie surplus. So Retta's cool. There's even like some more peptides coming down the line that are going to be like for, there'll be like the Retta is like a 3, works on 3 different pathways. There's like some that are going to be working on 4 and like they're going to really bump it up. The new one, the bioglutide, is going to be an oral and it's a 4 antagonist. So it's basically like Retta with another, I think it's like IGF. So you actually will keep a little bit of the muscle, which is a muscle wasting is another issue with those GLPs. You don't want to lose all your muscle. That's your metabolic currency there too. So there's issues from that. But Retta shows a less effect, but then they're starting to do these orals where they're adding an IGF, and it's basically going to be that'll help preserve the muscle while still getting the other factors, and it's going to be an oral. I was like, shit, I wish we were just selling that. We'd be a trillionaire, but that's just probably going to go crazy because Americans want a quick fix overall.
Always.
I like to stack in these peptides and different things like later on when you're kind of more balanced and can kind of get some of the effects of it like we're talking about. But we could talk about peptides another day. Back to, sound like we kind of wrapped it up on COVID, but you had some interesting things that you're doing with Lyme as well, which I've talked a lot about on the show because I got diagnosed with Lyme, and I think it's a bioweapon as well, and that's one of the reasons that it's difficult to detox. I talked about on Luke Story's show about that manganese piece, which is a big piece, I think, because the studies are out from like 2014 basically saying that it can like other pathogens that use iron, Borrelia will use manganese to evade the immune system. These creatures get smart, but they have different ways that they do it. But in the research, they're just trying to like down-regulate manganese enzyme pathways and do weird reductionist kind of approaches instead of like really figuring out how to release the excess manganese. And so they're trying to do like it's been a while since I read it, but like maybe like low manganese diets, and they're using pharmaceuticals to kind of like to shut off certain manganese enzyme pathways. Whatever they were doing was very reductionist in my opinion. But we know that we can release that excess manganese the more we balance out and just get rid of the toxic manganese that way. But you're also, I add in some herbs for people. Ozone can be a little strong if you got a real bad case of Lyme, but it does help. I kind of do micro doses with that if people have it available, or you can do capsules from Simply O3 that are pretty decent, or suppositories there. I don't know if you ever played with them. They have ozonated olive oil for like topical, but they also have capsules. They also have suppositories, which work really well. Like I'll take those if I'm traveling, especially like foreign country. When I was in Costa Rica, you're kind of just like drinking weird water sometimes. And it saved me just having ozone in my back pocket the whole time. So that, I kind of use those for travel uses, especially abroad, but they can be good for Lyme stuff too. But what are you introducing as far as like Lyme cases? If you know definitively, there's a lot of people who are undiagnosed who probably have Lyme too, but if they have Lyme, like what are you introducing?
Yeah, so I'm gonna reference a lot of this stuff. Actually, I just learned from studying the work of Dr. Klinghardt. I do think he's like the current authority in treating Lyme cases. Just because like as I've implemented his stuff, it was definitely. I was diagnosed with Lyme as well, and I never really attacked it directly until way later in my journey. And when I did have a massive breakthrough in what I would say is my mental flexibility, creativity, and presence in the way I showed up with. It's like, even though I was essentially asymptomatic in all senses, once I actually like treated it with liposomal herbs, I just found everything got so much brighter. My eye floaters went away, and then they came back, and then I like treated it again, and then they went away again. Turns out apparently, because of the magnifying effect in the eye, often those eye floaters are actually the spirochetes themselves, which is pretty mind blowing. But anyways, it's. A lot of this is going to essentially come from like Klinghardt's protocols. It's just what I found works best. And he's essentially then taken a lot from Buhner's work, which is the original kind of like Lyme guy. He's written a bunch of books on it. But it's weird. there's definitely a lot of signs and that it might be a bioweapon. So I just encourage people to go down that rabbit hole because it's pretty mind blowing. But for that reason, I think it is worth again addressing directly. What I do is all the foundations come first. All the getting rid of glyphosate, as you described in that podcast too, it's like glyphosate will dysregulate manganese, and then all of a sudden there's more food for the Lyme to feast on, right? So, changing the terrain, reducing aluminum, which is also a growth factor for Lyme. Different studies show that like higher aluminum levels in the body would worsen Lyme-related joint pain, right?
I think mercury as well, right?
Yeah,
Mercury
yeah.
is very correlated with Lyme as well.
Yeah, it's well, mercury is an interesting one because it's anti-spirochetal too. So it would give it to like I think it was Mozart, right? When he had syphilis, which is a spirochete, they gave him mercury as a treatment. And although it kind of sort of suppressed the Lyme, it also created all sorts of crazy symptoms, right? So
Right.
that's a weird one, right? But what can actually happen is if you detoxify mercury really well, the Lyme can start growing back, which is pretty crazy. So then you have to like I think approach it directly in those cases, but all the foundations come first, all the drainage, and then for really sensitive people, you have the other tools like you have the mast cell support, you have the vagal nerve toning, you have the limbic system support. By the way, I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier. I think in this, it's not just about physical healing. I think people really need to be working on all levels, right? I mean, it's really can make or break a healing process if a person is just focused on the physical, like most Americans are, versus working on all levels, which includes, working on EMF reduction and biophysics, which means working on your traumas and processing all that repressed stuff that people feel somatically. I also think it means working on the family system and trying to bring as much harmony as you can into it as best as you can. But all that can often trigger releases of heavy metals on its own. So I want to preface that that's kind of within the foundations even. But foundations, I take people through parasite work if they're a Lyme case, right? Parasites often are like life rafts for smaller microorganisms and toxins, and that includes Lyme spirochetes. But when I finally get to it, this is kind of like really late down the road. What I'm doing right now is I will do hyaluronic acid, sublingual hyaluronic acid as bait, right? So spirochetes are essentially addicts to it. They go crazy over it, and they have a cystic form, right? Where you can, for example, what happens with antibiotics, if you give people, the Lyme antibiotics, some people get better, but some people get worse and develop autoimmunity. And that's because sometimes those Lyme spirochetes will retreat into the cystic form, which then is stored away. It's not active, but the immune system senses it and attacks it and goes crazy. And so you get all sorts of autoimmune issues, right? But so I use hyaluronic acid because it'll bait them out of the cystic form, right? And then you quickly follow that up with different Lyme herbs. So I like, BioPure cocktail, right? Or the KI Vita as well is really good. Just a nice different blend of herbs. I actually sometimes make it liposomal for people, which you can simply do by adding phosphatidylcholine and either shaking it or putting it in an ultrasonic jewelry cleaner. You can make your own liposomal herbs really easily. So that is a pro tip. But so I do that, and then cistus as well, cistus and canis. You can make a tea, and there's also a tincture. That's maybe one of the main ones that's really wonderful for modulating and healing and restoring the immune system, as well as having direct anti-Lyme effects. And then another tool I like also is for some people, liposomal biocidin will come at the very end because of its impacts on biofilm.
Potent.
Yeah, it's potent, but again, for some people can really just turn the lights on.
Yeah. I remember taking that from, Dr. Minkoff. I'm not sure if you know this. He studied with Klinghardt. He literally, I don't know how long he was with him, but that's his mentor. So he was obviously doing things. He went and did all of his muscle testing training with Klinghardt, which is, it seems super advanced. Like he wasn't even touching me directly. He had his nurse touching me, and then he was using her arm.
That's the real way to do it.
That's the way to do it. Like Klinghardt taught him that, and so that because when you're doing it as a person, like you're already weak and you're depleted. Like you might be shaky. Like when you have a nurse who's trained in it with you, that's really the way to do it. And that's how we do the product.
The main reason, and just to interject before you continue, is because there's an issue called transference, which essentially the practitioner will project their issues onto a client. And so if you're muscle testing one-on-one, then often a practitioner's issues will show up on the client, and you're testing both the client and yourself at the same time. But for some weird, not really well understood reason, testing in threes completely eliminates that, right?
Yeah, because I started a muscle testing training. I got like one certificate, but there's like levels to it. Like I would have
Yeah.
needed it to go to like three more courses to really like do it as a practice, and then I just kind of like doing stuff more virtual, so I never kept going with that. But yeah, they talked about that, how like you can
Yeah.
basically, if the practitioner isn't doing the muscle testing program as well and they're reacting to something, then that'll show up for the client. You'll basically give them the wrong protocol. So you do have to definitely find someone who does it well. But yeah, Dr. Minkoff was interesting. It was very expensive, and I still felt like I was kind of dead when I left it. But he claimed the Lyme went away. Like I was no longer muscle testing for Babesia or Epstein-Barr or Lyme. So maybe that specific herbal protocol. I was on peptides, lots of different therapies in his clinic. So there's a potential that I actually like killed off at least the Lyme or most of it. Who knows if it ever came back? But then really didn't heal until I got on mineral balancing still. But definitely lots of But what I was getting at is he had me on the Biocidin, and that shit was strong. It was very strong, especially when I was more toxic. And these other ones called Monastery of Herbs. Have you heard of these?
Oh, I haven't. No.
So there's like, I believe there's like monks praying over these things, and they do like different blends. And so there's like I would rotate. I muscle tested for Lyme and Epstein-Barr, but he would have me like, there was like Epstein-Barr 1, then Epstein-Barr 2. So like your body kind of get used to these herbs right after you use them for a month, and then you'd hit them from you'd switch it. It'd still be focused toward Epstein-Barr, but it'd be a new set of herbs or different ratios, and they weren't used to that. So then it kind of hit them, kind of caught them off guard because they were getting used to evading the ones, and then you hit them with the next ones. Some of them were liquid, some of them were capsules. So between those and the Biocidin, those were some of the most potent kind of like antimicrobials that I was like pretty much a zombie. I don't even know how I was getting through that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you need just so much good foundations before that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just really, it often just jumping straight into that does not work out well, from what I've seen at least.
I was just powering through. I was like doing enemas and like taking naps all day. I was like not a person. I definitely wasn't running businesses or doing anything productive that much. I was making just enough money to keep the lights on pretty much and maxing out credit cards. But I was so dead. I just thought that, this guy will fix me. And then you kind of just get into the space where you just keep learning and growing and evolving. And finally you end up with, protocols that work at least. And I think the herbs for Lyme can be critical. They're tough though. Sometimes the Lyme cases, they're so sensitive that it's like, if you're not really like, your program's designed a little bit differently, like they're paying you to like kind of hold their hand and walk them through. Like, it's almost like you need to do something like that. You need to charge some of these Lyme cases probably a little bit more, because like I would need to be with you like a lot more than just like reading your test and checking in via email, because they're just so sensitive.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I structured it this way. For some reason, with my story, I've just been a magnet for those kind of people. And I found that the only way to properly serve them was to hold their hand with really intensive coaching programs, which creates, I think, better results. But of course, like, you have to put more skin in the game. And then, of course, in the people that are more generally well, I just, have a set number of calls. I'll just space it out more. And so we can work through more stuff together. It's more hands off, and, you're getting more value for money, essentially. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So Biocidin's the final boss there, but then you had like do some of the liposomal herbs. I have to hit you up after the show, and I've never made some liposomal herbs. I didn't know it was that easy.
Yeah, it's piece of cake. Yeah, just good phospholipids. You take, I like just getting maybe a 2-ounce or a 4-ounce dropper bottle from Amazon. And then you just pour in the contents of the herb that you want, and you just add in the phospholipids. And again, you just close it and you shake it. Or you can get one of those $30 ultrasonic jewelry cleaners. And that is really similar technology to what they'll actually use like in a manufacturing facility to make things liposomal. They like vibrate it really quickly. You leave that there for 15 minutes and you have a really, really potent tool, which you'll need maybe like 1/10 of the dosage if you do liposomal herbs. For example, I have people often do liposomal liver herbs, right? So I like a product called the Maro Sonara from KI Science. That has, like dandelion, it has artichoke, it has gentian, it has a bunch of other nice herbs. But it's really good on its own. But then when I make it liposomal, I'm like, yo, you only need like 3 to 5 drops and you're going to get the full effects, right?
Well, are you using like Body Bio for the liposomal phosphatidylcholine? Seems like they have the best.
Yeah, those are good. Quicksilver's good. KI Science is good. BioPure's good. There's a bunch of good brands, but yeah, Body Bio is really good.
Yeah, because so you use a or the liposomal PC, and then you're adding in. Do the herbs have to be liquid? They can be powder. Does
You
it
can
matter?
do powder too, yeah, and you would just have to instead blend it, right? So, for example, broccoli sprouts I use in my practice a lot for immune modulation. It really helps heal a person's immune system through a bunch of different mechanisms, but I find it a good step before parasite cleansing in some cases. Also, one of my favorite things long term because it's a preventative for so many different cancers. But anyways, you can do, like your dose for the week of that and mix it with some water and then add phospholipids and blend it and then keep it like in a mason jar. And then, you have like your dosing for the week, all liposomal, right? And you can do that with all powders as well. The thing is though, like liposomal is way more powerful. And so obviously like you need to have already been at a full dose of tool before you make it liposomal. But yeah, it's powerful stuff.
That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to play around with some of that. I haven't done as many herbs. We added some herbs into Valence, obviously, which I take based on the supplement program, which I think have helped. Honestly, there's been a little bit of a pushback, but I think they're pretty like adrenal fuel for one. I felt like people were not trying to buy into because of the herbs, but every single client that I have on adrenal fuel feels amazing.
Yeah, it's a really good product.
I'm like, should we change it just because a couple people are scared of herbs? We have the COAs right online. Every one of my clients is like, I love the adrenal fuel. Yeah. Like everyone.
The truth is, if you're going to do something like unique and new and try to improve things and change the status quo in whatever field, like you're going to get pushback. And that pushback is helpful. It's good to listen and be like, okay, is there value to it? But ultimately, like sometimes you just have to like carve a new path. And that's why I respect Valence so much. You guys have done just such a wonderful job in evolving the mineral balancing program. So
yeah, we changed the kidney because we were like, okay, maybe the herbs, but I'm starting to push back on the group a little bit. Like, I like adrenal fuel. Yeah. I like it just how it is. I think word will spread. A friend will tell a friend, try this. I think you might have been a little bit slower in the beginning because practitioners are scared of the herbs, but most of them are scared of well, there's two reasons. Some people say that they're sensitive, but the thing is, being sensitive to a herb that you just took randomly and at like some clinical dose is a lot different than what we did at Valence, where we're basically matching the herbs specific to like oxidation rates or patterns. So the actual herb is meant for you in that pattern. You're not, you only take adrenal fuel when you're in a specific pattern. You're not in the same herbs when you're on ThyroSpark. They're different because you're in a different state. So people are just like, oh, I took ashwagandha at, whatever, 300 milligrams or whatever these companies are selling it at, and I didn't have a good experience. Well, it's like, well, the dose is way lower. It's spread out throughout the day. And also you weren't in the pattern where we would have gave you ashwagandha or whatever, enter X herb. And I find that my clients are liking it. So I'm trying to fight to keep adrenal fuel the same. We'll see if the new kidney flow still works as good as the Shin. We shall see. But I like Shin Force too. So I was kind of like, not really even trying to, just push back a little bit because I'm like, you do want practitioners to use your products, but also it's like, well, what if we just keep putting out information and just getting new practitioners? Because there's a lot of people waking up to the power of mineral balancing. You see a lot of people going through Clark's course or Susan's or whoever's. And so I do think like over time we'll have like this new generation who won't really even care about what was used in the past or like, is it working now? And that'll be good.
Yeah. I mean, the results speak for themselves. So
yeah, there's not, it's a night and day difference for sure. And the amount, it seems more expensive, but then like when you're doing the lower doses, it's really not. And you're just getting more improvements on it. One thing I want to definitely jump into, because we're both playing around with this at the moment, is a little bit of a high dose B1 therapy. I tried this a long time ago, which is interesting, back to this kind of foundation thing. So I researched Elliot Overton before I ever found mineral balancing. I just like heard him on Mito Life, dug into all of his YouTube, sounded like it was good for mold and all sorts of different metal toxicities. Oh, excuse me. And so I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. And I did it, and I felt like a little bit better, but not really nothing crazy. So I kind of was like, maybe I was just too toxic to feel that, and that probably was the case. And then I did mineral balancing for a couple of years, and then just a few months ago, something was just kind of like, maybe I'll circle back around to this high dose B1 therapy, specifically Elliot Overton's brand. And I've had more energy. I actually feel calmer, which is kind of counterintuitive to some of the mineral balancing space, because they're like, you don't really want high dose B vitamins in fast oxidation, which B1's a little different because Dr. Paulek did give B1 and B6 to fast oxidizers. So it's not like he excluded those two from fast oxidizers, but this is obviously a much higher dose, which some practitioners would argue that it speeds up the oxidation rate. But my retest didn't show any speeding of the oxidation rate. Actually, it slightly slowed down a little bit. So what are your thoughts around this B1 therapy? Who would benefit from it? Or you'll use it in specific patterns, specific people? Do you think it's for everybody? What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. It's like different. It's like any tool, really. Like it's not going to be a one size fits all. But turns out, vitamin B1 in particular has a really nice impact on essentially repairing a broken part of a person's mitochondrial function. So that's the real magic of it. It's not so much about like addressing a deficiency. It's that under the unnatural stressors that we're facing, and particularly if you come from a background of drinking alcohol or doing a lot of drugs or drinking a lot of caffeine, which I love my caffeine, right? Or eating a lot of carbs, right? Or dealing with chronic infections and a high amount of oxidative stress. What essentially happens is the thiamine dependent enzymes, right? The ones that are dependent on B1 stop functioning properly. And so the high dose, actually the mega dose B1 therapy is not about replacing a deficiency. It's about overriding and fixing that dysfunction in the enzymes so they can come back online. And since those enzymes are rate limiting, when you do that, there's a rippling effect in energy production and really every system of the body, right? So for some people, they don't have that dysfunction in their enzyme systems and they don't respond to it. Other people like me, right? I didn't realize that I had essentially that blockage. And even though, I was feeling really healthy and good already, when I introduced Megadose B1 in the correct form as well, because there's different forms, which I'll touch on really briefly, it absolutely changed the game for me. For me in particular, I found my cardio went up like times three, essentially. I mean, I could just like work out and play soccer like infinitely, essentially. Or I could also find that my mental energy went up dramatically. I could go from working 8-hour days to crushing 12-hour days really regularly and still have energy at the end of the day to just do random tasks, right? Which was like pretty mind blowing. Again, I thought I was already at a good state, but this kind of definitely took things to the next level. So yeah, it's a really wonderful tool. The form that both you and I are taking, I'm pretty sure this is the one you're taking, is called TTFD. So it is essentially a thiamine with a sulfur group, which massively increases the absorption actually into the brain too. So it's really good for like central nervous system stuff. But yeah, really, really powerful tool. It has great impacts on gut motility, has great impacts on energy levels, great impacts on just like all sorts of random things. But it is not just like, it's not a stimulant. That's really the big thing. It's about, again, repairing something dysfunctional in the mitochondria that allows you to produce energy properly again, right? The other thing is that, again, post-COVID, one of the big vitamins that got depleted was B1. So
Mm.
it's not just that, there's also actual deficiencies that show up. And again, especially post-COVID. And a lot of the issues that came with COVID were autonomic nervous system dysfunction, right? So imbalances between our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system, right? And so these are the people that, again, they always feel like wired, but then they can't fully relax when they need to, right? And so what I found is when I took Megadose B1 and introduced it as part of my mineral balancing program as well, I found that not only did I have more sustained energy, but I could also shift gears a lot more easily, right? And so like the same thing you described, you could feel a lot calmer with it, right? Very, very interesting thing. Now, talking about foundations, the thing about it is that it is going to it's going to essentially show you what nutrient deficiencies you have, right? Because when you fix that part of mitochondrial function, then the demand for all the other nutrients increases. And so it is something that, at least in my practice, the way I've been using it is you have to be on mineral balancing for an extended period of time first to make sure all those things are covered, to make sure there's sufficient glutathione being produced as well. And at the right time, for some people, you introduce it slowly and titrate up. And it's, again, for some people, like turning the lights on, which is just massive boosts of energy and euphoria, even. So, absolutely a mind blowing tool.
Yeah. Definitely great for mood, at least if you respond to it. And there's even, I think, I don't think you want to go this far with it, but, Elliot Overton's big into B1 therapy, and he goes way higher than, I think I'm on 100 milligrams a day. He has people 250, 500, sometimes a gram a day. I think I've heard him even speak about, which is like, that's where I think you're definitely going to get into where you're going to, really need to have that mineral system working well and those other things that it may deplete. But even at 100 milligrams, you still want to make sure you have the foundations in place because that's a higher dose for sure, which I know magnesium is one we talked about that you may need a little extra of. But if you're doing the CalMag supplement and you've been doing it for a while and you have sufficient levels, it might not deplete it. But we also have the HTMA for that. And if we see things look a little wonky, then maybe we can add an extra like 100, 200 milligrams if you really needed magnesium there, and make sure it didn't, skew the ratios too bad. Some people do well with a little extra magnesium just because they're stressed or depletion, and it kind of burns at a more rapid rate. So there are people who find that they do a little bit better with some magnesium as long as if the CalMag ratio is really skewed, I don't mind it that much because I'm like, okay, it's already super, the ratio is already screwed. So maybe that little extra magnesium. If you're in fast oxidation like me, you're already getting the extra magnesium from fast oxidizer. So for me, I haven't added any in, but maybe someone on a low dose CalMag and they're on slow oxidation potentially could maybe have to do a little extra bit of magnesium, nothing crazy, but just enough to make sure that's not being depleted. But I have found interesting you said cardio because I didn't really put that together, but I started riding the Peloton again. We bought one years ago. I actually have never done like a cycling class, so I thought it was going to be just lame, but my wife was spending like $20 or $25 going to cycling like a couple times a week. So I was like, why don't you just buy a Peloton and then you just pay the monthly thing of like 30, $40. And then it's like cheaper than you spending like $100 a month on cycling classes or whatever she was spending. And you don't got to drive anywhere. So she technically bought it a few years ago and it's like paid payments on it. And then we hadn't used it in like a year, but I was like been getting back into working out. I'm like, the Peloton's actually kind of fun. There's like a hip hop guy that I like that plays all the jams that I like. He plays Drake and Big Sean and everything. And I'm like, cool. His name's Alex Toussaint. So I actually find it to be fun. I don't have to leave the house. I can but I've been just like cruising through these like 45-minute rides that are pretty challenging. And I just got back into cardio and lifting like last month and a half, 2 months. And I'll be like number 4,000 out of like 25,000 who did that class. I'm like, that's pretty decent for just like these people probably all these people in this probably ride this Peloton more than me. I do more lifting. I ride it like once a week, sometimes twice. But the cardio, I don't know if it's from the B1 or just all the mineral balancing I've been doing or what it is, but I've been cruising through those cardio sessions easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed the same thing. I found when I was doing kind of like weightlifting occasionally, I had left it for a while and then like brought it back in. And then when I brought it back in with B1, I found that I could just like hit a really high level of intensity for an extended period of time, a lot longer than I could really before, which was really cool. The other thing that's interesting too is that sometimes, there's a few symptoms that kind of will tell you like there's some mitochondrial dysfunction. And one of them is not sweating very easily. And for me, I always sweat very easily when I hit the sauna, but I found whenever I would work out, even if I was going pretty intense, I wouldn't sweat that much. And when I started doing B1, essentially like my skin turned back on and was just like easy sweating as well, which was it was very interesting. So yeah, it's a really, really cool tool. I don't think just thiamine is really does it, right? Just regular old thiamine. It is specifically these other forms like benfotiamine and TTFD that really create these amazing clinical outcomes at times. But the thing that people should really be aware of is the existence of paradoxical reactions. Like again, Elliot Overton, I highly recommend people check him out and kind of learn all about it because it's a very interesting addition to mineral balancing. But paradoxical reactions are essentially where you feel worse before you feel better. And again, like any tool that has the potential to make great change, there's also the potential for gnarly side effects. And in particular with TTFD, some people react really strongly to it. And so it's a kind of later thing that you implement once you make sure all the foundations are in place. But I think actually a lot of the paradoxical reactions are actually due to metal detox, which is very interesting because um, thiamine in general is actually one of the best ways to increase your excretion of lead, right? There's a lot of
Yeah, I was
research
about
on
to say
that.
lead.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then TTFD specifically because of its sulfur group is really good for mercury, right? And other metals that are dependent on, I think they're like, they have affinities for like thiol groups, I think is what it was. So other similar metals, but in particular mercury. So there's good Japanese studies done on TTFD where like TTFD alone will decrease the concentration of all heavy metals, but especially mercury in all the organs, especially the brain, actually, again, because it crosses the
Wow.
blood-brain barrier. So it's very cool. But again, so you have to be prepared for that, right? So we're thinking like drainage pathways, right? We're thinking foundations, but most of our toxins are going to be in the extracellular space, right? They're going to be like kind of in easier to get compartments. There's only a smaller percentage that are actually like intracellular. And so you want to be careful when you do things that are intracellular, like B1, right? It's going to push things from that space because you don't want like a traffic jam to happen, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And maybe that was part of where I definitely just had a slight detox reaction, which as you just get into this space, it gets so much easier. Like the longer you do it, I just kind of felt a little fatigue when I was working out, was blowing my nose and kind of coughing up some stuff from the lungs. Wonder if that B1 played any role in maybe mobilizing some things. I've been on it for like, I think like a month or a month and a half. So maybe, or maybe not, but could have been part of it. Could have just been a normal healing reaction or detox reaction or whatever. But I do think there is definitely that, component where these heavy metals, just like we're already preaching that they're depleting some of these nutrients at a rapid rate, so maybe just the B1 therapy is just good to stack on top, and maybe you don't notice anything like I did in the beginning, but now that I've reintroduced it later, it really has seemed to have a pretty powerful effect, and I enjoy it. It's like energy but calming, and my workouts have been good, my sleep has been great. I don't know if it has any effect on sleep, but I've getting into this phase of like detoxification where I feel like my sleep is definitely starting to improve dramatically better than maybe it's ever been in my life, which is pretty bizarre. And I always do all these sleep compounds and everything, but it's like the more I eliminate and the more the parasites and stuff come out, and you're like reducing that oxidative stress in general. I'm just starting to get deeper sleep, better sleep, more rested sleep. And now that the baby's sleeping a little bit better, that helps too, I guess. But so the last year was a little rough. I was stuck in fast oxidation, and I'm like, I already know I'm probably not getting out of it anytime soon with the baby. But, adding that B1 definitely helped, dramatically for me. So if you've been on a mineral balancing program for a while, you can at least try it. I think the one that Elliot Overton, what is his
Diamax, I think, is the one.
Diamax? I was trying to think of the name of the company.
Oh.
Essential something nutrients.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can just look
EO.
up Elliot Overton nutrition. You'll find
Yeah.
it. EO.
Yeah, you'll find them.
Yeah.
The TTFD is what I like as well, especially with that sulfur group on there. That's what I found to be the most beneficial. We use benfotiamine in the valence stuff as well, which I think helps, but it's a little bit of a lower dose, but definitely more bioavailable at least. So we try to use mostly that, but it gets some of those by themselves get expensive, and then we're adding it into all these other nutrients that you also got to try to make it reasonable there. But it's like 20 or 30 bucks, I think, for like 60 tablets. It's really not, I mean, it's a no brainer to just throw it in there and see if you can at least get some benefits from it. I get it right on Amazon. I know there's a lot of fakes on Amazon, but just make sure you're on Elliot's store, and get it from the right place. But yeah, I think it's like 20 something bucks, and you get a couple months worth if you're just taking one a day. And I mean, at least try it out.
It's good. Yeah. Full Script sells TTFD as well. It's called allithiamine, which is ecological formulas. That's even a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
And that one, and so it's called allithiamine again because actually it's a form of thiamine that is really, really, really similar to the form of thiamine you would get in garlic, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's interesting, but it's a good tool. Just as always, I think it's best done under the guidance of a practitioner because when you're long enough in this space, you'll see people react to absolutely everything and the randomest things. I mean, I've seen people react to freaking, calming down too much, right? I've seen people react to like random stuff. And so
Like, I'm not joking when I put on my Instagram sometimes, like the population is kind of cooked.
yeah,
Like they're like between SSRIs, 10 different hormones, which I'm not even against hormones, but when you're on like 10 of them, it's like something's got to give here. You're just trying to throw another hormone on top of just a dumpster fire of terrain here. So I don't mind hormones, especially as you age, but just throwing it on top, like I've literally helped this lady. I don't know if she got off hormones, but she was on like 10 when she came to me, and I'm like, you got to work with your functional doctor to tailor these as we move you through. And she's still on the program. She's doing well, and I helped her daughter as well. So, and she was having a trouble with, lots of different functional practitioners. So I think that, definitely these nutrient therapies are going to work. I want to switch gears while we finish up here a little bit to a couple things that I've been playing with, but I think you probably, I would imagine, have played around with different forms and things of like iodine and selenium. Where have you landed on like forms of iodine, forms of selenium, things like that? What are you playing with? Because I'm sure you probably have played with some different forms.
sure. Yeah. So I know you've embarked on the nanos, which are very, very interesting. That's kind of like new to me. So I don't really know. I'm like definitely curious to hear. But what I'm liking personally is for selenium, I like the amino acid forms of selenium, so selenomethionine and selenocysteine, because you can dose those a lot higher very safely. The other thing that's really cool about selenium is not only is it a great detox agent, but it is also supports the production of glutathione. So it pairs really well when you're doing B1 therapy. Sometimes all you need is a little extra selenium, and B1 therapy can work for a person. But also, it's kind of a birth control pill for many cancers because of its impact on essentially endogenous retroviruses, which is the work of Dr. Judy Mikovits. Selenium can essentially slow down the progression of a lot of these, right? So really, really cool research on it. For iodine, the conventional usage in mineral balancing is kelp, but I actually really do like Dr. Group's Detoxidine because it's very versatile. You can do it topically, right?
Is that a nascent
Yeah,
iodine that he's using?
that's
Yeah,
a
that's what I
nascent
thought.
iodine. Yeah, so you can actually add it to enemas as well. Some people find it's really a lot more tolerable that way. But yeah, and that's kind of the form I typically use. The thing about iodine again is that it's just not tolerated by everyone. People who are hyperthyroid don't tolerate iodine well. People who are severely hypothyroid, you need to kind of like titrate things in. Or people with like Hashimoto's, then there's a whole other kind of thing with that. But for a percentage of people who do tolerate iodine, I like Detoxidine personally. Again, it's like it can be a real IQ booster, right? Which is very cool.
Yeah, so I haven't talked about this much. I have a couple clients trying it out because I want to kind of just gauge slowly, do a couple clients here and there who I think could tolerate some of this nano stuff a little bit better. And so I've been in, which both of those are great products too. I think especially some of those forms of selenium are better with mercury, not even the nano, like the methyl selenocysteine or whatever it is. Or I know that one's definitely shown to do better with mercury. But as I started playing it, because I had Barton Scott on my show before, we vastly disagree on how to approach mineral balancing, but he does have these, I think from what I gathered, I didn't really talk to him about his exact methods to it, but it sounded more like replacement therapy in my opinion, but he was just trying to move the needle with the nanos, and those are more absorbed, and that's how he's doing that. He's got nano calcium, nano magnesium, pretty much, he's got nano potassium, he's got nano anything you want. Pretty much nano iron, which might be interesting. I thought about maybe if people I don't like iron supplements, but I thought maybe that nano might do something better. But I don't try to do iron unless it's like very rare that I actually I just try to eat red meat and go from there and get some of the metals out of the way. But he has these nanos. And so I started playing around with the nano selenium because I just was like, I had him on the show. We'll try it out. And so then I started doing research on it, and there's actually pretty clear studies showing the effects of nano selenium on mercury in the brains of rats, and how well it effectively removed the mercury from the brain, which is, been a big part of my healing journey. I knew that from going into it because I had those mercury fillings that were extracted improperly from just a regular dentist who I just went into one day, and they're like, we don't use these anymore, and they just drilled them out, which is actually worse in my opinion than keeping them in. I actually would prefer people to keep them in until they can afford like a holistic person to do it, because when they drill them out, it just goes right into your brain. And that was probably a big part of my metal burden for sure. But The nano selenium, I don't know if it's just from the mercury removal. There was definitely a period in the beginning where I had to go super low on it. I almost was getting like way more like depressive symptoms and like brain fog. I was like, okay, maybe it definitely is clear. So I kept it I was maybe doing like 50 to 100 micrograms of it a day, just like super like low. It's hard to tell because he does like a little dropper and the full dropper is 400. So you kind of are just like eyeballing it, but I would keep it on the very low end. And then gradually over time, I've gotten up to like 200 micrograms of it a day. But I also have just started to see like tons of parasites come out. So I was like looking at that, and it's basically saying that the nano selenium has that ability to penetrate those parasites much more rapidly than a normal form. So I think it's really good for mercury in the brain, which will also, you get some more mercury out of your brain. You're probably going to eliminate parasites regardless, because I'm sure the dysfunction that mercury is causing in the brain is also down-regulating immune modulation throughout the entire system. It's obviously, it's in your brain. It's going to be pretty terrible downstream as well. But yeah, I've noticed tons more parasites coming out since I switched to that. And so then after that, I was like, I'll play around. I definitely started to do research on kelp in general, because we wanted to put out a kelp supplement because that's what the mineral balancing space likes. And I have no issues with kelp, but as I started to look for clean kelp, even the very most transparent kelp people, the COAs were horrible. Like the people who were like, we do all the heavy metal testing, and then you get the COA and it's just like cadmium through the roof. Cadmium in a lot.
Yeah.
Like, they must really, there must be a lot of more cadmium in the waterways than we expected, or at least than I expected. We usually hear like mercury, and you hear cadmium and arsenic kind of on the back burner, but I'm expecting like these other metals. So even though I know a straight marine biologist over in Ireland, and he had access to kelp that's not even really on the market, but they can get it there. They don't really sell it, but he's like, but we do, people over here harvest it and we sell it as like a powder, but it's not like some big supplement company. So we kind of have I had this random in with this guy that I know from Ireland. And he got this super clean kelp. The COAs are great. There is a slight amount of arsenic in there, but at least all the other heavy metals are super low. So it's as clean as I could find so we don't have that out yet. I've tried it. He sent me samples and I loved it. But I was like, wow, maybe the kelp that I am using previously might even have some cadmium or some metals in it, because I've never seen the COA. So I was like, until we get our kelp, I'm going to try out some other kind of iodine. And I already started to like the nano selenium. So I was like, let's try the nano iodine. I actually know my buddy Freddie Kimball. I'm not sure if you know him, but he knows tons of he's got a great podcast too called Beautifully Broken. He's been on my show. He's great. I always link up with him at like health conferences and stuff. He said that like tons of his, because when you start talking about minerals, everybody in the space kind of asks you about these nanos, because Barton's been on a lot of these shows. So they kind of ask like, what's my thoughts about them, because I'm kind of always talking about minerals. And so he said that a lot of his functional practitioners, they really like the nano iodine, which kind of makes sense if you think about from the HTMA standpoint. Even if they're not running HTMAs, that fast oxidizers and hyperthyroid is way less common. And so those are the people that would be sensitive to it. I even have to I'm in fast oxidation with slightly hyperthyroid. So I can't do like the higher doses of iodine. I just won't feel that good. It'll detox me too fast. So I'd still do like a 2 to 3 milligrams, which is like kind of middle of the road, especially when it's nano. But if I try to do like the 5 milligrams that a lot of people do, I'll feel awful. So I keep it around 2 to 3. But, most people that come to you are hypothyroid and they're in slow oxidation. So I could imagine those clients feel pretty good, even if they're not doing HTMA. They're like, you should take some iodine. And so those practitioners are getting good results with that because of the bioavailability. And, I think cell membrane function is an issue the more toxic we get as well. So the nanos are kind of bypassing maybe some of that, just straight off the rip, which could potentially, because I didn't even start these till years in my program, starting someone off on the nanos may be too much, or you may have to do like super small doses with those clients. So I haven't introduced it yet because I don't know exactly how I would want to dose it specifically. And I had a couple clients react to it a little bit negatively, and then I put them back on just like the Seleno XL and the kelp, and they were kind of fine. So I definitely think there's a potential where it's a little strong, and you might have to really start with just a few drops. Maybe that might have been the case. I just kind of put them back on because they already had the old stuff with them. Like, I just go back to the old stuff, and we'll try to reintroduce the nanos later. But I think the nano selenium, I for sure have noticed. It definitely seems like it's clearing my brain out. I've seen way more parasites. And then the iodine is clearly doing something, because if I bump it up too much, I wake up with like brain foggy and feeling like I did too much. So there's definitely, and I've just, my latest retest did have more mercury coming out. It wasn't like some crazy elimination, but definitely shot up some mercury, and my selenium status did get better. So, I've been using that for like the last like 4 months, probably at least, maybe 4 or 5, but slowly tapering up the dose higher. And so play around with it, especially if your clients have like they've had the mercury amalgams removed, or they had mercury for sure, or maybe even ate a lot of seafood. But for sure, the mercury fillings are the ones that are going straight to the brain, and we have evidence of that. So I think that the brain tries to keep that mercury super locked, like hard, because it's just so toxic and doesn't want to let it go. I'd rather just keep it bound up in the HPA axis or wherever it's at. But I think that nano is kind of like, fuck you, I'm coming in. And if I can, because it's such a small, like, not only is Barton's nanos nano, I think they're like the smallest of the nano. They're like ultra nano almost. They're like, Aaron was almost saying that it could be too small of a particle. Like sometimes the body might do better if it's a nano, but it's a little bit bigger. So there's definitely some research. So not to say that he has the perfect nano, but for me, it's definitely worked. So anybody who's experiencing like knows for a fact they had the mercury amalgams and stuff like that, would highly recommend keeping it low and slow, maybe just even doing a few drops and seeing how you feel with that. And then you can slowly kind of taper it up, but it's been good.
Amazing. Yeah, very interesting. I'm definitely going to do some research into it. I would definitely say though, real quick, anyone who has had amalgams, just make sure you're on binders, really. I mean, that's like, the mercury is really gnarly when it comes down the pipe, especially when, people get their amalgams removed, even in a safe method. Once that final amalgam comes out, the body then starts to be like, okay, let's get it from our storage spaces. And it comes in hot, right? So, things like your Zeocharge can work for that. Pectosol can work for that. There is one specific, more advanced metal binder that I just kind of want to float onto this space. It's really wonderful. It's called IMD, intestinal metal detox. It's from Quicksilver. It is a thiol functionalized silica that is, in my opinion, the best mercury binder in the world. It's just really strong. Check those out.
Quicksilver always does great. I've never done anything, but I've always listened to them on podcasts. It always seemed like they were getting people healthy. And their products are really high level. I've used some of their products. I've just never done like the push catch or done any of their metal binding stuff. But I think I've used maybe a couple binders from them, bentonite clay they might have, or something else. It's been a while. It's been a while. I definitely used one of their binders back in the day when I was just playing with binders and just kind of trying to find my way through health. And they've had a few other things that I can't remember. It's been a while since I've played with them, but they always seem legit. I like the research that they put out on podcasts. Forget the guy's name. He's really great. What's the guy that goes on all the podcasts from over there?
Dr. Chris Shade.
Yeah, Chris Shade. Yeah, Chris Shade. He does a great job breaking everything down. So I think that they're definitely putting out good products. So I'll have to look into that binder for sure.
Super cool. I mean, it's just kind of circling back super quick. It is just cool that mineral balancing gives us and just people in general such a stable backbone to lean on, because it consistently works, consistently creates stability. And so then you have more opportunities to implement tools that can push you further that wouldn't work otherwise without it. Right.
Yeah, that's what makes me want to start like, oh, maybe I'll try like some of these parasite cleanses or these liver flushes, because I was just, the mineral balancing itself had me destabilized for the longest, because I would never like skip doses or anything. Like I went to Costa Rica for 2 weeks and never skipped a dose. Like I was just like, I was bullish.
Savage.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like drinking espresso martini. Like we didn't drink that much because I don't drink that often, but I was on vacation. It was my honeymoon. So we had drinks a few nights. Like I was like taking them even when I was like drinking espresso martinis. Like I was savaging it because I had just been so sick so long that I didn't even care what I felt like. Like I would just, I would drink a Feel Free or something if I felt awful, which is not recommended. There's a lot of people actually getting addicted to those things, I guess. I never really, I mean, I've abused kava and kratom and kind of felt a little hooked and just backed off of it and just was tired for a couple of days. But there's apparently, I've never drank more than 2 bottles of that Feel Free in one day. And even if you do that, you kind of feel like like you're drunk almost.
Yeah.
You definitely feel high or drunk. Like, I don't know how, like somehow people are getting into like 5 and 10 bottles a day or something crazy, which is also like $50 to $100 a day, which is beyond me. Like, I'm not trying to spend all my money on kava and kratom. I like the effects from it. But I recently took a break from those too, just because I like to check myself because I have an addictive personality. But so I haven't even had a new brew or anything in like over a month right now, because I was starting to get where I was drinking like one new brew every day, and then sometimes you'd reach for a second. And it wasn't pretty mild because I wasn't like abusing it, but yeah, feel free, can help with detox reactions and new brew. I've noticed, because the kava, I think, is calming, and then the low dose kratom kind of gives you a little bit of a mood boost and energy, so you kind of at least feel a little bit better even though you're detoxing. So I started using them for that purpose. I'm actually the guy who made he does just the kava blend, the Cam. He does true kava. He actually claims that he couldn't even do Dr. Pompa's program without kava, like basically the GABA effects, the calming effects of it. So he makes tinctures and he makes the drinks you can drink now too. So apparently kava for him helped calm him down. So, that parasympathetic activity is, you need that for detox. You can't be out here working 80 hours a week and doing all kinds of crazy shit. You have to have some space to actually heal on the emotional level and the physical level. And for him, kava did that as like something he could just rely on instead of trying to do meditation or whatever, which is hard when you're kind of already like stuck in fight or flight or whatever. So kava for him helped him get through the mercury eliminations and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's deep interconnection between our autonomic nervous system and even like mast cell activity, right? If you're freaking out, your limbic system's out of control, you don't feel safe in your body, you're going to often have higher mast cell activity and higher sensitivities. So that sounds great. I personally like to use liposomal GABA and L-theanine, again, by Quicksilver. That can be really helpful for some people, or ME support from Cellcore is also a good one for kind of supporting. And then of course, like, you have all the other tools you can use, Primal Trust and all the other kind of things for creating regulation. Yeah, I think GABA is actually overlooked for people with mercury as well, because of its effects on that NMDA receptor that Clark talked about on my show, and how it basically, you're not going to be able to uptake your glutamate and turn it into GABA. So you're basically stuck in this place where you don't have enough GABA that even calms you down, which you need the GABA to calm you down. So whether it be kava or, there's pharma GABA. I like even a product by Newtopia, which is like a nootropics brand that I use sometimes when I'm recording or doing audios or videos. But they have a spray called GABAlicious, I think it's called. Okay. And it's like you do a couple sprays of that and it's like instantly feels like it must be like, I don't know if it's liposomal or what, but it's quick. It acts like super fast. Nice. So I like that. And it doesn't make you tired or anything. It just instantly kind of calms the mental chatter, kind of makes you feel like a little bit better and a little bit calmer. So I have some of that in the fridge that I spray every once in a while if I'm kind of feeling overstimulated or something like that too. Cool. Right on.
All right, man. Maybe we should leave it here. I think we crushed it. Honestly, that was a good one. I think we went through a lot. I'm sure we'll brainstorm some more topics to talk about in the future as we both keep evolving within this space. But let everyone, before we go, let everyone know where to find you. You kind of broke down that it's like a long-term program, so people kind of at least understand that what they're getting into, but let them know where to find you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me on your show. It's a lot of fun. Glad we could get into this kind of flow state together. So I love really having these conversations about some of the awesome tools that are available to us. I mean, really, as weird as it sounds, it's really never been a better time to be sick. There's so many tools available to actually heal deeply and so many people doing it. So it really makes this work fun and fulfilling. So people can find me at my website, Jyoti MB, right? So JYOTIM as in mineral, B.com. There I have a bunch of resources, bunch of other podcast episodes, bunch of in-depth articles I've written. So briefly on my programs, I do coaching programs for people. So I guide them through really in-depth teaching of how to approach detoxification in a way that they leave empowered and understand how to care for themselves long-term. That's my ultimate goal. I want them to really break free from that practitioner, hamster wheel. so that they can, again, like understand how all these tools work, how to revisit phases as needed. And then, of course, the backbone to my programs are always mineral balancing based. So, depending on the case, we may just focus on mineral balancing and kind of work with that. And other people will do other tools. But yeah, that's the gist of it. I hope this information serves anyone who listens to it. I hope it serves them well. And thanks again.
Yeah, dope. Thanks, brother. And I'll put the website and everything in the show notes so people can get easy access and stick around while I close out the show.
Perfect, man.